Ay, 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 ay.
Hey y'all, we be fucking streaming.
And welcome to the Wileyverse. I think this is all running, all that jazz. No, I don't know what yours is doing. It's weird.
Super weird.
It's like you're looking at old videos 30 seconds at a time. So this is the Wileyverse, and this segment is called Wileyverse Mitch. I am Wiley. This is Mitch. Every week we go through a new game where I explain the system, we talk about the world, we create a character, we play some encounters to show how dice rolling works and how the system works. And then I try to kill him with encounters in the game so that you can get a feel for the power level and all that kind of stuff. In this case, we are doing one that we are both familiar with. It is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Oh. So
this is one of the few so far that we've played where I'm fairly familiar. I've run a couple of games in 5e. I've played a lot of 5e. We've done 2 different streams. We did a what would we call our first?
The Candlekeep game.
The Candlekeep game. We played our Dragonboard campaign for quite a while, for actually 42 sessions. And now we're going to be starting a new session tomorrow, based on the 5e, so fairly familiar with it, but at the same time, why not learn something new?
Right, or learn the basics at least. So, excuse me, I'm just messing with settings. Ooh, there we go. Huh.
We're so white balanced.
Oh,
you made me taller. Hey, quit pushing stuff.
I made you taller? You're taller than me. Everyone's taller than me. Alright.
I meant to get new dice today because my dice have been cursed.
Well, we were just talking about that in superstitions and things like that. And one of them is, for a while now, since I've gotten back into gaming, I was kind of a dry spell for a while. I've been buying new sets of dice for every game I play. We're
all dice heads here. Dice are everywhere. These are Xernax's dice. He's a Dragonborn
copper
rogue, but he's copper.
Copper dragon.
So the dice are copper, but they're made out of copper. So they weigh quite a bit. I was actually going to play with Isarog's old dice.
Which are?
They are the dark red ones that Galen uses, and I don't see
the cursed ones.
Galen's made. Are they underneath the mimic? I think they're under the Mimic.
No, they're not in the Mimic. Nope.
No. Oh, there's one of them. Is that the D10 right there? No, that's not either.
No. They were right out here.
Well, then, fuck those dice, because they seem to have done their own thing.
Yeah, they really don't want to be used again by you.
Yeah, right. Okay. So neon pink dice for D&D 5th edition.
This is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We are using options and characters from the Player's Handbook only. This is a great place to start if you are new to D&D, you're going to be playing your first game, you're curious about it, or anything. When I go off what is in here, I will let you know, but I'm going to try to stick to this purely just the options, just the characters, just the races that are in this book, and I'm even going to try to stick to the enemies and the encounters that they explain in here. So everything, this Player's Handbook even gives you the methods to play your first game as a dungeon master.
Yes, I was going to say.
It has a bestiary, it has the encounters.
As a new person, this thing is absolutely wonderful. They also have a GM handbook, which I don't have myself.
DM.
He's got one. A DM, excuse me, Dungeon Master. Yeah. They also have a Monster Manual. This Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual. These 3 books, you don't need all of them. But having them does add stuff. I think you can play with the Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual. I only say that because those are the 2 that I have, but this is extremely interesting. This is extremely, helpful. It's got a lot of stuff in it for new people, and it's broken down in a way that's very explanatory. For someone like me, I had trouble. Like I originally had the Riffs handbook, the Riffs original core handbook. I read it cover to cover a couple of times from Palladium, and I read it a dozen times, and I still couldn't quite start my own game. This Player's Handbook alone, if you read it, you pay attention, you use it as a tool, you can play any Dungeons & Dragons game right now. Let's do it. Let's have a good time. So this 5th edition is very accessible. It's a lot of fun. We play it quite a bit. In fact, tomorrow we'll be doing a new session.
A new game.
5e. Yeah.
Yep. So Player's Handbook has everything you need to know to make characters, run the game, experience the combat, experience the other type of encounters, deal with travel, deal with all the hazards of the world. The Dungeon Master's Guide expounds upon that, goes into specific nuances of dungeon mastering, how to manipulate the system, how to make it yours, and customize rules. Then the Monster Manual is just a bestiary of stats and history of all of the creatures that are historically Dungeons and Dragons.
But it's so beautifully illustrated.
It's amazing.
It's really a lot of fun.
Amazing.
I read to go to bed at night. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm reading about mine."
I need to find it before we leave tonight. There was an off-world called Iron Kingdoms. And they wrote their monster manual all from the perspective of the same guy. And he talks about what he's learned about the different creatures and races and all that stuff. But then he gives you, like, literally in game, they'll give you 3D difficulty levels. So if you have a creature knowledge or a history, a check, you can roll, and depending on what you get is what information the GM gives you about the creature you're looking at.
Well, that's fun.
So it's like, this is what everyone knows.
So
this is what they know. This is what they know.
Would you say that's kind of similar to people that might have heard about Dungeons and Dragons, Xanathar's Guide to Everything? Is it similar? It's written from a single point of view, right?
So, yeah, Mordenkainen's Tone of Foes, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, they're written from perspectives, even Volo's Guide to something. Volo's Guide. They're all based on in-character looks at things, but they explore different things. Like, Mordenkainen's explores new class abilities, new class types, and new dungeon master options, like the physics behind the world. I think it died.
Yeah. It's okay.
So then you got that's Mordenkainen's is Tome of Foes. I apologize. Go back to that. He gives you new monster types and some new classes. Then Xanathar's Guide to Everything gives you new DM options, more in-depth or optional rules to running the game, new classes.
Versus Xanathar's Guide to Everything is...
That's Xanathar's Guide.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is about enemies and things like that. But it's also about races. It really goes into some specific races that are kind of the off races, like tieflings. It even goes into gnomes. Delves into their backgrounds and histories. Then there's Volo's Guide to Monsters?
That's okay.
God damn, I can't remember. It's Volo's Guide is specifically more about monsters and putting more monsters on the table.
So I was going to say, as important as that is, I'm brand new now.
If you're brand new...
Let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons from the scratch up before we make a character.
If you're brand new to this game, there's all these source books, there's all these things. This is all you need. This is all you need to get into the game.
And also, even as somebody who wasn't really versed in it, we've all heard about Dungeons & Dragons. This is kind of where everything started.
And it's 1973, TSR was founded. 1974, the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons came out. And it was really the first of its kind. It took the reenactors' miniature war games, gave them individual rules so you can play an individual person on the battlefield, and put it in that fantasy world of Tolkien and all the other sci-fi fantasy that was coming out at the time. And this is something I'm going to coin a phrase from Matt Colville, is Fantasyland. If you know Fantasyland, then you can play this game, which is, if you've ever watched Conan, if you've ever watched Lord of the Rings, if you've ever watched any kind of the Merlin TV show or whatever, or Excalibur, you know Fantasyland in some way, shape, or form.
So for people like me that just learned recently, that means elves are elves, dwarves, orcs, trolls, giants. Those things exist, and they exist the way that you kind of think about them, because most things are written around Dungeons and Dragons. Tolkien was around, but so was Gygax, so was the other
influenced by that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in other cultures, you all have your Fantasyland. Japanese has their Oni, they have their Kappa, they have that. So if you're in the Asian cultures, you have your version of the orcs.
Dragons,
dragons, the Kirin, all that kind of stuff.
English have demons, that sort of thing.
Everyone has their version of Fantasyland. And you can get together with a like-minded set of group or a diverse set of group, pool your knowledge of Fantasyland, and all experience it together. Because when you go into a town, it's going to have the bar, it's going to have the blacksmith, it's going to have a general store, it's going to have a mayor. Everyone knows this in a fantasy setting. There's not going to be too much technology. There's going to be water wheels and horses and carts. That's Fantasyland. That's Fantasyland everywhere. If you're just getting into this, that's all you need, is the fantasy history that you already know. And then this will give you the rules to play characters in it. And we're going to go straight off this to create a character from scratch. I did not print out a character sheet.
So normally for Wiley vs. Mitch, we do print out sheets. However, specifically for D&D, we have D&D Beyond, which is a great application if you guys have the money for it. It's very worth it. And
for free, you get all the basic rules, which is one racial variant, one class type for everything, plus all the basic rules of the game. So even if you don't go out and buy this book, even if you're just interested, you can go into D&D Beyond. You can, if you have a Twitch subscription, if you are watching this right now, you can log into that.
Let's see if it works on the camera.
Yeah. Of course it doesn't. Of course it does. But you can go into that and you can use their character creator. You can use their source book rules lookup. All of that.
If you've seen any of this before, you'll see most of us playing with our phone. What we're really doing is checking our character sheets, adjusting things like damage, like health points, new weapons, losing objects, that sort of thing. and it's all connected through a campaign, so our DM has it. So even if I name something stupid, I have a habit of naming things. So if I name my physical strike the copper slap, he can see it, and it shows up in real time. It happens instantly. It's a lot of fun. We're not here to promote, and we're not sponsored by Dungeons and Dragons Beyond, but D&D Beyond is a great program. It's something very useful. A lot of the games we play here are all over the place, and they've got varying degrees of popularity or age. You know, like TMNT and like even Vampire the Masquerade's like 3 iterations beyond, right?
It's the newest one is their 5th edition. So,
but with Dungeons and Dragons, we're talking about a mainstream thing. We've got the books, we've got the programs. It's no reason not to use D&D Beyond if you have the availability. And
pen and paper or pencil paper is really all you need to get it anyway.
You really do.
So, we're going to do their step-by-step character creation. Again, this is set in a world, and the world can be anything. The standard world for Dungeons & Dragons is called the Forgotten Realms. It's a pretty standard fantasy land. But you don't have to start there. You can build your own. You can go at your own pace. You don't need to learn a lot of lore. The Forgotten Realms itself has at least 20 or 30 years of history written into it, rewritten, undone, redone. So you don't have to go into that. If you're new players or if you're a new DM, there's a lot of great resources out for you. One of them I would suggest is Matt Colville's series on new GMs. And one of the best ways to go about this is pick the setting, whatever it is, Forgotten Realms or whatever, and go online and just look up Forgotten Realms, cities and towns, and then pick one. Just research it, read whatever wiki article comes up about it, put your plot hooks in there, put what you want to see out of a game, and feed off that. Just go off of whatever it says. This is the town, this is the area, this is whatever, and they're going to fight orcs, or they're going to fight goblins, or whatever it is you want them to do. And then as you progress, you can branch out in the world. As they hear about this other town, you can go research it, or talk about it, or make it up yourself.
So I want to say, having done this myself a couple times, but really having like a professional GM with me, making the world and making the encounters really does depend on the team. Because if they're all rangers, then it would be silly to do some certain things. If they're all thieves,
if it's druids and rangers, then you make rural and nature wilderness encounters. If there's a bunch of thieves and fighters and mercenaries, then you do city encounters and things like that.
Perfect.
Anything you want, like get a feel for your group, talk them out, and get the lay of the land.
Perfect. Well, let's make a character.
All right. Step-by-step characters. Step 1, choose a race. So,
I've got to start a new create a character.
In this, do standard. We're going through the D&D Beyond app because I forgot to print out a character sheet.
And that's totally fine. Watch our older stuff. We usually do pen and paper. We're just doing, because we play D&D so much, we do have the apps ready to go.
Turn off everything for this because we're just going to do this. This is still going to have a bunch of stuff that you can't choose in that because I own a lot of the D&D Beyond content. So, in this case, the races are Dwarf. And this is your standard Gimli-style dwarf. Thorin and all them. They're the fastidious, they're the honorable, they're the stubborn style dwarves of Fantasyland. Any other setting could change that dynamic back and forth. I feel like in reality
I'd be a very tall dwarf. Very stubborn.
Then you have elves. You know, your standard Legolas, those kind of elves, the haughty, proud.
If you've ever seen Hellboy 2, those elves are really good representations.
They are.
Of immortals, quick, fast, practice their whole lives. They're immortal, so time means something different. You perfect a skill rather than earn a skill.
So halflings are the Dungeons & Dragons world of Tolkien's race that you all know and that we're not going to talk about because the reason they called them halflings was that name is trademarked.
Does it rhyme with Bobbit?
It does rhyme with Bobbit. In this game, they've evolved, so they're not the like hairy-footed kind of people. There's two versions of them. One's a little bit stouter, kind of like what you see in Lord of the Rings, but the other is more childlike, actually proportioned to what size they are. So you have Lightfoot and you have Stoutheart, and they do have different feel to them. So the Stoutheart are the ones from Lord of the Rings. The Lightfoot are way more childlike explorers and wanderlust-driven characters. They're not the hole up in little communities and stay there. They're way more the adventuresome ones.
Would you say that society views them differently, or are they still just halflings?
It depends on the society. If it's a society that deals with halflings a lot, they could probably differentiate, but most will only encounter one or the other. Either there's a community out there of Stouthearts and they just keep to themselves, versus the only ones we've ever seen are these childlike Lighthearts that come out and...
Lighthearts?
Lightheart.
Lighthearts,
yeah.
Okay.
Lightheart?
That's Lightfoot.
Lightfoot.
Human.
Lightfoot, yeah. Lightfoot and Stoutheart. Humans, the basic race of everything, their population is usually the most populous in any of the Fantasyland style games, but that can vary depending on the world. Like Earth Dawn has way less humans than most D&D worlds.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest reason they're everywhere is that they are prolific and adventuresome. They go out and homestead, where the dwarves keep to their holes.
Like,
I mean, they do that. They're like rabbits.
They propagate easily.
But they go everywhere. They do everything. They need more farms. They need more food. They need to be on the waterfronts, where the dwarves and the elves have established their kingdoms and stay there.
Interesting. So is there, as you know, asking as a new person, is there a bonus or a negative to being human? Like, all these other races sound exciting and neat. Why would you be a human in Dungeons and Dragons?
That goes a long way. Each of these races do have bonuses and, I don't know, drawbacks is not really the word. They kind of got rid of drawbacks from the old edition. They used to have negatives. They used to have all these penalties. But they got rid of that, and everything's a positive now. Everything just builds upon your character, which is kind of how life works. You know, you don't...
So what would be the positives of being a regular person?
So humans, they don't have the night vision of some of the other races. They don't have the poison resistance of dwarves. They don't have the charm resistance of elves. But they are versatile. They are just... They can do anything. So they get a little bit of versatility. They get some choices at the beginning, which you can tie into your character and your character class much easier. Mm-hmm. Sorry about that. So we'll get into specific benefits and negatives depending on race we go into, but, and we were just talking about this before, there's just a big article out. You're going to have characteristics like you do in all role-playing games. Different races have different bonuses to different characteristics, which make them naturally inclined towards different classes. There is a movement to get away from that, as if you're going to be a warrior of any race, you'd of course work on your warrior-like characteristics. There's a great article in D&D Beyond about that, but for this, we're going to stick with the tried and true, what's here, and certain characters just make better whatevers.
The only reason I actually asked that was because there is kind of modern literature about it. Races and negatives and positives, that sort of thing.
And there's some great articles, there's some great mechanics behind that out there. So just look up on D&D Beyond, separating characteristics from race. If you don't like how the races are represented in here, they all still do get their specific traits like dark vision, resistances, and other abilities.
D&D is also the first game we've done on this stream so far that not only do I know it, but there's a plethora of reading material. If you're at all curious about D&D, you can read about everything. There's so much.
And it could be daunting, and that's really why we're sticking just to this book, to show you that, you know, we're going to talk about the options and all that's out there, but this book is very concise and brings you into it. The next race is Dragonborn. They are a draconic humanoid race. They're not necessarily cold-blooded. They actually kind of run more hot-blooded than others. There's a lot of stuff you can read about them.
I've never heard of these guys.
Yeah, never heard about these. Dragon. They look like dragons. They are tied to the different color of dragons that are in the game. There's, if you're new to D&D, there's two primary types of dragons. Chromatic, which are evil dragons, red, blue, green, white, black. And then their metallic counterparts, which are generally good and sage-like dragons that help mortals. Gold, silver, brass, copper, and
bronze. And if you are really interested, this channel will have down here right somewhere.
Yeah.
You can look on our YouTube or his YouTube channel and see we had about 42 sessions of a Dragonborn campaign where you can see what it means to actually be Dragonborn. We've played Dragonborns very extensively in the past.
And then there's Gnome, which are industrious. There's two types. There's forest and there's mountain. Mountain are like little more inventive dwarves. They create contraptions. They know about gears and clockwork and steamworks. Where you have the forest gnomes, which are more like little elves, which are they can commune with nature. They are one with nature and all that. So a gnome is a very interesting race because to me it feels like it is split between the Fey ancestry of the elves with the forest gnomes and the dwarven ancestry, you know, the stone ancestry.
So for people that are new, how big is a gnome? Because I always thought they were like that. Little guys.
Gnomes are actually smaller, if I remember this correctly, than halflings. So they are the smaller of the races. So they're between 3 and 4 feet tall.
So they're this big. Yeah. They're this big, not this big. I always thought that gnomes were like garden gnomes, but in D&D, gnomes are considered like 3 to 4 feet. So I'm standing where my lap is, right out there, a yardstick.
Yeah. So halflings are about 3 foot tall in that range, and gnomes can be 3 to 4 feet tall either way. So, and dwarves can be up to 5 feet tall. So they can, be a short human size, but they're stout. So
the big little guys.
Then we have half elves, which are either from a union of elf and human,
as much as I like this picture, I really do love half elves.
Or they can be from a union of elf and human, or they can be descendants of other half elves. So you could just be born of half elves.
So, does the book cover, like, my mom was half an elf, my dad was half an elf, I'm half an elf, my quarter elf? Is it?
No. Because half elves being half elves just creates more half elves.
Half elves.
Yeah.
So, half elf lineage.
Yeah, it's really a lineage, and there's a couple of these races in this game where they used to be tied to a union of two specific other races, but now they've become a bloodline and a race unto themselves. If you are a human and you're with a half-elf, that person's going to be half-elf because they have elven lineage in them.
Well, sorry again for interrupting, but explain half-elf to us real quick.
So half-elves are kind of, they're in between. They do not belong. They come from some big history, especially from the Dragonlance world, where they're not accepted in the proud, haughty elven society because of their half-human nature, but humans will always see them as thinking they're better than them because of how humans view elves and their haughtiness.
So elves see them as lesser, humans see them as graders.
Yeah, and so ostracize them as well. Like, oh, you think you're better than me, versus the elves that think, like, you're tainted or whatever. Not getting too much into that. Every race now is so homogenous, or the races are so homogenous in most of the worlds. But the culture that they live in and they grow up in is one of finding your own way. So they're very independent spirits. They're very communicative. They're very talkative because they've had to ask for everything in their entire life. They weren't a part of a community historically.
So negative would be ostracization from two different species.
Yeah, they feel like they're loners.
But a positive would be like
they know how to
communication.
Yeah, they know how to talk to people because they've always had to talk to people. They've always had to justify their place or get what they need.
I like it. I might not pick it, but I like it.
And then you have half-orcs, very similar in the same relationship. Most half-orcs now in the worlds that they belong in are descendants of half-orcs. So whatever happened before, half-orcs were born, and then half-orcs got with half-orcs, and half-orc communities were born. So it's just lineages of half-orcs.
So without getting too risque, do orc and elf match?
Maybe. That's not really.
You say half elf or half orc. Excuse me.
Generally, in most of these settings, it is everything can mate with humans.
Okay, just making sure.
So, in the Dark Sun world, there are half human, half dwarf combinations called mules.
Oh, so.
Yeah, moles.
Yeah.
I call them moles. They're mules. But they're forced by magic, and they're a whole different race. So
Don't listen to that.
Yeah, Dark Sun is its own thing.
Dark Sun is advanced D&D. It's angry. It's mean. It's like 40K. If you've ever played any Warhammer 40K, all I learned was everything sucks.
So half-orcs are descendants of half-orcs. They have all the hot-bloodedness and kind of natural anger of the orcs, but all the versatility and charisma of humans. And they're in their own communities, and they can really go either way. They can live in societies, just integrate completely with them and be fine, or they can be pulled into the orcish hordes and go fighting as if their orc blood was the only thing that mattered to them.
Is there an advantage to going to the orc horde as a half orc?
Most orcs don't care, but no, then they just kind of become monsters.
More orc, more. Okay.
In the
so you can either be more of the other race or more antagonistic.
Right.
Orc. Okay.
And they're normally you're seen, or they're seen in the NPC realm. There is, and I can't remember if it's Mordenkainen's or if it's Volo's. I believe it's Volo's. Volo's Guide to Monsters, as I believe what it is. Volo's Guide to Monsters will unleash orcs, kobolds, goblins, and hobgoblins and bugbears as player characters to show them that you can be these races and there's outliers in it, or you can play an entire campaign in their society, but they're generally not too accepted in most of the locations in Fantasyland, depending on the location.
It does make things tough. I played a bugbear rogue once, a thief, and he had ambush abilities, which was really nice, but his language was considered common basic. So it was even hard for me. Like, if I wanted to role play, I'd be like, yeah, go do that thing. Like, it was tough. It was tough.
Tieflings, or as I mistakenly call them, Tiefling.
No, Tiefling. It's Germanic.
Yes. But I grew up with TIE fighters, so that's the way I say it. That little guy, he wants to play too, if you've seen the moth flying around here. So Tieflings are... This is getting to races that are...
What is it?
Tieflings, sorry. Tieflings are getting into races that are... They were humans, but they have something else from otherworldly patrons tainted into them or in their bloodline. Tieflings specifically are devil aligned. Somewhere along their lineage of that race, they made deals with devils and they are now tainted. So they have horns, they have tails. Some of them have tails, some of them have horns. Some of them have a sulfur smell to them, glowing red eyes, switchback hooved feet. Your characteristics are really up to you, but if you're looking for that devil-like creature, that cool, edgy look to your character, this is a great way to go. They do have an infernal bloodline. What? So the tieflings have infernal bloodline. They can call upon their infernal blood and that tie they have to do quirks of their nature, and specifically in this game, they get dark vision, they have resistance to fire damage, which is pretty awesome. They also start learning spells naturally, specifically ones that kind of have to do with the devilish heritage they have. Like Hellish Rebuke, which is when they get attacked, when they get hit, they can send a flame out at their attacker. So pretty cool, very off-kilter abilities in their race. They also have good charismas as a race, if you're still running with the characteristics tied to race, as from their devilish contractual, binding, liar, devil bloodline. So that is the core race section of the main rulebook. Tiefling, half-orc, half-elf, gnome, dragonborn, human, halfling, elf, dwarf. Yep, those are the races you can choose from the basic game.
Full-blood elf. Or you actually skipped full-blood orc.
There isn't. It's not in here. I did talk about that. I said Volo's. It's Volo's guide. Oh, I didn't say orc specifically. Volo's guide to monsters also doesn't work. So it's all the goblinoid races: orc, goblin, hobgoblin, bugbear, and kobold, which is actually draconic.
Well, through description, I think I know what I'm going to pick.
Is it half elf?
It probably is. We are not sponsored by Rolling Rock, but we are absolutely available. We do enjoy a pale ale from time to time.
We should just call this two drunk guys trying to figure out a game. All right. So step by step, choose your race. What race are you choosing?
Let's go half elf. I love an underdog.
All right. So that's it. Just choose race on that.
That's right.
Bing.
Straight up.
Straight up. Half elf. Alrighty then.
Is this actually showing up on the sidebar?
No, you're not in one of my campaigns, so.
Ah, bummer.
I could put it on there.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Wouldn't take very long.
We should do that tomorrow, though, when we play.
Oh, yeah. I already have those.
So, normally when we play, it's not happening right now, unfortunately, but when we play our regular campaign, which always happens on Wednesday nights, you can always see on the sidebar over here our characters, our character sheets, our equipment, our spells, all
and
that
it's
stuff
real time.
Always there. Because it's great. Why not do it?
You can take hit. You'll see the hit points change. You'll see inspiration come and go. All right. So you are
half elf.
Half elf. So your half elven abilities.
Ability score increase. 2 choices.
Yes. So as a half elf, you get to.
So, because I know what class I'm going to take eventually, I am going to take dexterity and intelligence.
Wisdom, perception. So, half elf traits that he gets to pick from when you choose a half elf is your ability score. Because they have the versatility of humans, they have that. They've always tried to fight to get along. They automatically get +2 to their charisma score. We're going to be talking about characteristics here in a second, but charisma is your personality and your kind of your
je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, it's not je ne sais quoi. It's not will, because that's wisdom, but it's your
tenacity.
Yes. So villains that are hideous looking can still have a lot of charisma if they're the person that walks in the room and commands the room. Okay.
That's me. I'm good at talking. I'm not good at looking.
So they automatically get the +2 to the charisma score, but being human, Humans get +1 to all stats just right off the bat because they're versatile. They can do anything. To come off of that as part of their lineage, half-elves get to put 1 additional point into any stat they want to show that heritage of versatility.
And since we can't show it on a screen right now, the abilities are Constitution, Dexterity, Intelligence, Strength, Wisdom.
You went all over the place.
Dexterity, Constitution. Well, yeah. It's the way it lays it out.
Yeah, it's Strength, Dex, Con are the 3 physicals, and Int, Intelligence, Wisdom, Charisma are the 3. That we're not going to get into that yet because there's an entire section about rolling those stats.
It's true, but
rolling those stats have a lot of history to it.
I just want to tell you that Dungeons and Dragons is like kind of where this comes from.
It's and
this
almost
is the base for everything.
Almost every other game will have 6 stats: 3 physical, 3 mental. If they have something different, they're going to have more. They're still going to divide them between physical and mental. They may add the social category as a differential. And then there's some that go less, and they're really getting down to basics, pulling the crunch out of games, type of games.
So as a new person, you say crunch a lot.
Crunch is rules, lots of rules to you can think of any situation that can happen. I fall down 10 feet, or I'm above someone 3 steps and I have a sword in my right hand and they have a dagger. There are systems out there that would be like, okay, well, he's got a disadvantage because he's lower than you, he's got a disadvantage because his weapon is not as long as yours, and they give you all kinds of modifiers and all these things, and that's crunch. If the system is complicated and has a lot of rules, that's crunch. If the system is broad and open and it leaves things to the more cinematic, the more thematic, just talk it out and do flourishes and do the rule of cool, then that's light.
So you say crunchy quite a bit. Would you say D&D is more or less crunchy?
It is moderately crunchy. Almost like when you talk about games, this is the center line of crunch.
Perfect. So this is the kind of the...
Yeah. So when I say more or less crunchy, like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is super crunchy.
That was crunchy.
TMNT, super crunchy.
That was like rocks in my cereal.
So
crunchy. All right, I get it now.
They're pretty crunchy.
Yeah.
Firefly, not very crunchy.
So, do you prefer more or less crunch?
It depends on the group. It really depends on if my players need structure, if they're the kind of people that need the rules, or they're just going to go along with the story and the talking. And it really is like there's some people that can't take not having rules. They can't take it. Like, why is this so open-ended? Why can't I get a bonus for this little thing or that little thing?
Or there's me, crunchy as milk, where I'm like, whatever you say, just roll.
So this is pretty, all in all in games nowadays, 5th edition, compared to its older editions, 1st, 2nd, 4th especially, this is less crunch. But almost all games are going less crunch now. And then there's some really hardcore ones. If you want a crazy crunch game, Champions.
I was going to say Shadowrun.
Champions. It's a superhero game where you literally are starting to multiply by decimal point numbers to try to figure out exactly how much of an advantage you get or don't get. It's insane.
For me, it was Shadowrun, because you have to think about... We had 3 sessions one time about what we were going to do in session 4. And session 4 didn't work out as well as we thought. We had 2 more sessions before we played the actual action. So we had 5 sessions before we did 1 action.
They spent a week making characters.
No, we didn't. We spent 6 fucking weeks making. Or it was 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks. 3 weeks making characters. Oh my goodness.
So your ability scores, you got that. You chose. You have charisma, and you chose. Dexterity happens.
Oh, sorry.
And you chose charisma.
I can't choose charisma.
You can.
Charisma.
Oh.
Charisma's not an ability.
It is. You already have the +2 to charisma.
That's right.
Sorry, you get +2 to 2 other abilities.
Dexterity.
Dexterity and wisdom.
Wisdom.
Should be the one you chose.
Done. Cool. Got it.
So in this case, he's automatically charismatic because he's a half elf.
Which means I also get dark vision and fey ant.
Wait, that doesn't mean that. He's automatically charismatic because he's a half elf, and he chose to be more perceptive and have more willpower, which is wisdom, more insightful, more intuitive, and more dexterity, which is the speed and quickness of your character. So in addition to that, he gets more abilities, which are dark vision, so he can see in low light. He can't see in absolute darkness, and if there's just a little bit of light, he sees things in black and white up to 60 feet. Then he has Fey ancestry from his elven heritage. That allows him advantage on saving throws to being charmed. They're very resistant to that.
And it can't be put to sleep.
And he can never be put to sleep by magic.
Magically, yes.
So elves in D&D do not sleep. They actually just kind of sit down for 4 hours and they go through their memories and catalog them.
I think the book calls it meditation.
Yeah,
They meditate rather than sleep.
This weird system that they go into and all that. And half-elves don't have that completely, but they still have the resistance to being put to sleep.
Next is skill versatility.
Skill versatility. So elves, in this case, would get the ability to use longbows and longswords, as that is racially, like, every elf learns that when they grow up. But being a half-elf, they didn't learn that, so instead they kind of fall back on their human side, which is, we're just going to learn 2 skills growing up. And we're going to take to them easily because of that human versatility. And so you get to pick 2 skills.
So, if you've ever watched any of these streams, or if you haven't, my GM personally always requires perception. It's one of my
That's
skills.
big.
Is perception. It means I can identify traps ahead of time. I can see when somebody's lying. I can do all kinds of things.
Now, insight is lying.
Sorry, it's insight.
But they can notice the world around them. They can pick up clues, invest without investigation.
Being perceptive is really important. It's important.
It's how much information you get into your head and how much it registers.
And he's crazy enough about it that every game we've ever played, all of us always choose perception.
You should.
And we still don't quite always pass. But I have perception as one of my skill versatilities. The other one is stealth, because as a half-elf who's going towards a certain proficiency, I wanted stealth. I want to be able to sneak around. I want to be able to be quiet. I want to be able to hide. So there you go.
And the next is they picked up a language during their youth as half-elves, so you can just pick up anything. It doesn't matter. Every race generally has their own. Everyone knows common, the common trade language, which is usually the human language because they're so prevalent.
So I'm gonna take Minotaur. Just kidding. I'm gonna take Dwarvish because that seems pretty normal. Running into dwarves is normal. Running into elves is normal. Running into humans, half elves, even half orcs is kind of normal, but they won't always speak the language. Picking something silly like giant, goblin.
Unless your character has a background about it.
Since we're doing a quick run, I'm not gonna run into. Fuck is a Sylvan?
Sylvan is very common to elves because that's all the Fey races.
Perfect.
That's pixies. That's centaurs. That's
actually I'm gonna take Sylvan then.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna run into a primordial. I'm not gonna meet a Minotaur tonight. I'm
totally going to attack him with a.
But I'm gonna take Sylvan then because I just learned right now.
It's the base, like Elven.
Pixies.
Yeah, Elvish is based off of
Perfect.
Sylvan.
Done. Mm-hmm. Sylvan. All right, next.
All right, so the next step, he's got all his racial abilities down. The next step is class.
That's my favorite part.
I'm going to run through these fairly quickly. They're kind of self-explanatory because everyone kind of knows these things. There's going to be ones that I'm going to stop on.
There are a couple that I would like you to stop on.
So the first is Barbarian. Barbarians are Conan. They're the toughest warriors. I'm not gonna say they're the strongest. They are tough. They have
hittiest. Like the hittiest.
Well, they have the highest hit die in the game. Like, so they have the most hit points. They can take the most damage. They're so tough, and that's usually because they are not so much concerned with defending themselves as like the fighter that has a shield and a sword and armor. They're the I'm just here to hurt things. They're fierce, and so each of these classes, by the way, has 3 in the core rulebook, 3 different branches you can go off on. Barbarians are very primordial. They're very nature-based warriors. So when you go down their line, they pretty much focus on strength and constitution, taking hits, giving hits, and their paths lead them either down towards almost spiritualistic, shamanistic warriors, or just that battle rage, crazy, frothing at the mouth berserker.
It's almost like a monk war.
They're always using weapons. So monks specifically are not weapon users. Specific weapon users.
Bard.
So bards have had a colorful history throughout Dungeons and Dragons. They really kind of came into their own in 4th edition, and they brought that into 5th edition. They are a support class that they pick up magic from a whole bunch of other places. They picked up magic from all the other magic using classes. They've also picked up skills from all the other classes. So you can make a stealthy bard, you can make a crafty bard, you can make a talky bard, you can make a lying bard, and then they can pull spells from priests, they can pull spells from wizards, they can pull them from all over the place. And then on top of that, they are there to keep your group going. Mm-hmm. So they can inspire the group to give them extra benefits while they're using their abilities and things like that. Give them that little edge.
Cleric.
But they can... I'm sorry, going back to Bard.
Very excited. I'm like,
So Cleric used to be, I'm going into that a little quick, a heal bot. Like if you were playing the Cleric, you had to go out and heal. That was a big thing in this game, is you always had to have a Cleric, and it was always just going to be the healer.
They're an undead fighter. They've got
all kinds of stuff. And they had that too, but you'd see that with like... in your game, they get stuck in the healing role. Bards can also get healing spells, so they became a new support class that can help out the group. But they can also be that trickster. They can also be that... if you don't have a rogue, they can fill in the rogue spot. If you don't have a warrior, they can do okay in fighting.
Interesting.
If you didn't have a total wizard, then you can get magic through the bard.
I didn't know that they could actually fill in the warrior spot. That's kind of new to me. But...
It's not like frontline warrior, but they can be a fighter
damage
type.
dealers.
Yeah.
So cleric.
Now cleric is traditionally they're holy folk, but in this game you pick a domain because your gods. There's all these different gods, and they come from different areas. You can play a battle cleric if you take the war domain. You'll get to learn martial weapons. You can wear heavy armor. You can go out there and wade through enemies. But you can also be a trickster cleric that prays to a trickster god and does illusions and tricks people and kind of does the things that way. You can be light. You can be sun. You can be fire. You can be storms. There's all these different domains that you can pick from, and that will kind of taint or color your magic and what abilities you have. So don't think of clerics as just the heal bots. If you pick a cleric of life, no one is going to die around you. You can watch our Dragon Board game and see that in full effect. Yeah, he is a life cleric, and nothing can die around him no matter what I do. They can't die.
Dan's a pretty strong life cleric.
But then there's other choices, and they do have a strong focus, which is great for some games that need that leader or need that direction to pick that I'm a storm god and my god says to go do this type of thing. Druids are... So in this game, there are 2 types of magic. There's divine and there's arcane. Arcane is an energy that kind of makes up the fundamentals of the world that you can learn to manipulate, where the divine comes from the beings that created the world and can circumvent those laws.
So people that leave religion behind and become druids as their spellcasters.
Druids pray to nature and the natural world. So they are a type. They're a type of divine caster, but they're tapping into the primordial life of the planet and not following God, just the nature itself.
So then, what's the difference between a druid and a cleric? A cleric's taking holy.
It's both holy. It's that the druid is way more naturalistic. There's two branches specifically in the druid of the basic handbook, or the player's handbook, which is druid of the moon, who are shapeshifters. So for them, their magic is kind of on the side, but them turning into a bear or a raven or some other animal, that's what they do. They just do that naturally. They shapeshift and they just become animals, and they can go out and fight for nature, where the druid of the circle are the caster druids. And their magic is much like
a mage almost.
They become more like a cleric, but their magic is way more nature-based. Like, they can pick up a stick and make it a shillelagh, which hits as hard as a warhammer, and they're just smashing through things. They can make the earth come up and grab people. They're that, let's take nature and Mother Nature himself. And if you want to look at it, the druids of the circle are like clerics, but their domain is Mother Nature.
Can I find this information about domains and differentiation in the player handbook?
You can find it in the player handbook. You can find it on D&D Beyond in the basic rules. Just look up classes, and it'll tell you about all the things that they have. Clerics have about 5 or 6 domains that they can pick from, and druids have the 2 circles that they come from. Circle of the moon, or druid of the circle, druid of the moon.
Let's say druid is the one, without interrupting, the druid was the one class.
I really like druids. I really do. But when you play these kind of like, a lot of them, they try to taint them with the society is the disease. So it's like, you're going to be based in a city.
Like
you can't be a druid.
Yeah, they're wanderers.
You hate everything around you, and you can't use any of the abilities. So you can get around that, but it takes some work. It is an advanced class, depending on the game.
I definitely get that. So next is going to be fighter.
Fighter is a fairly straightforward. Is a fairly straightforward class. If you're first getting into Dungeons & Dragons, I would suggest fighter or monk as your first class. So fighter is the sword, shield, or two-handed sword, or the archer archetype. Like, if you just want to hit things and fight the dragon and do that stuff, that's fighter. And fighters have... You first pick a style. I'm going to be sword and shield. I'm going to be a two-handed fighter. I'm going to use a big sword or a big axe. Or I'm going to be a duelist and just use a single weapon against an opponent. I'm going to be a two-handed fighter. I'm going to use a weapon in each hand. I'm going to be a protector. So I'm going to use a sword and shield, and if anyone goes after my friends, I'm going to make it hard for them. I'm going to protect that guy. I'm going to be able to take the hits instead of them. They're just a great all-around class. I have to say that they're a staple. Like, fighter type of classes are like, gotta have your damage dealer, but in advanced gaming, they're the ones you can do without the most. Because you can get down into role-playing, you can get down to, we never want to fight, we go around these type of situations. But if you're just getting into D&D, learning the combat system, learning how fights go, learning about hit points, learning about saving throws, you want to get into fights. And you're going to deal with many of your situations as fights. Later on, when you learn the system, you're going to learn how to get around fights. And so the fighter kind of becomes...
Well, I was going to say...
a background.
I read an article recently that was, what are the 3 main types of D&D characters? And the first one was human barbarian, not fighter. Then elf rogue. Yeah. And then third was like half elf paladin or human paladin, something like that.
Something charisma.
It was very, very charismatic.
So fighters are your fighter. It's always nice to have one. They are a great class to start with. a lot of D&D comes down to conflict. It just happens, and then it becomes a tactical thinking game, which is great. Teaches you how to, risk management, all that kind of stuff, and the fighter is right there on that front line. They have the abilities to mitigate damage. They have the abilities to deal damage. Monk is the fighter that generally uses their fists. They get so good with punching that they can make it magical. They don't need weapons anymore.
Their hands become weapons.
Right. And they can, if you think about Monk in any, Asian aspect, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about Friar Tuck. We're talking about,
like
Shaolin monks.
Kung Fu movies.
Kung Fu monks. And they have several different types. You can become kind of a bender from Avatar. You can mess with elements and bring them into your fighting style, and that's almost like a caster style monk, where instead of spell slots and all this complicated stuff of these spell casting careers, you're using ki, your life energy, your meditation.
I didn't realize you could use ki to cast.
You can they're the elementalist monks. Then you have the open hand, which are they're like fighter monks. They're gonna beat you up with their hands, and you're gonna have full plate armor and a sword and a shield, and they're just gonna put you on the ground. Punch through that stuff. And there's all kinds of other monks in the game. There's kinseis, which are masters of weapons. They start picking weapons. They are the samurai that says, this is my sword, this is my life, I become this. I'm the master of the nunchucks, I'm the master of the chain, or this. There's several different monks that are amazing. It's a great path. And online, the huge argument is, what is the easiest class to play for new players? And it always comes down between fighter and monk. There's people that will...
It's never rogue?
Nope. There are people that will write theses on which of these two classes is the easiest class.
I have to say, this is the first time I've heard that monks can use weapons beyond sticks, beyond staves. I didn't know they could have...
They actually, short sword, interestingly enough, is one of their basic ones. Huh. So if you've watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, him with his dedication with that straight edge, floppy sword, which is a Chinese staple of master of martial arts. You don't go out in wars with units of those people. You go out in wars with spears and shields. But that one guy that mastered his sword can wipe out that entire unit of sword and shieldmen. That's a kinsei, because he's learned that sword and how it moves, and to get around a shield, to get up underneath a spear, and get around all those things. He is a weapon master, and that's a monk. In this game, that is a dedicated fighter style of monk. Paladin. Cool. Yeah, they're very
wow,
cool. I'm glad I have a monk
totally.
coming up in my game, and I really think they're cool.
We'll be here tomorrow. See the monk.
Paladin. Paladin are holy warriors, so you can play a war cleric, a war discipline, or war
oriented.
Yeah, the sphere, a war sphere monk, war sphere cleric, and war
Paladin.
domain cleric, and they're pretty badass, but they're still casters. Paladins are the flip of that side, just the other side of that coin.
They have just enough magic to be scary, but they really are sword fighters.
They are not. They're champions. If you want to look at anything, they are champions of a cause. Now, paladins used to just be holy warriors. They had to pick a god. They almost got the same benefits as a cleric. They just got less spells and more combat abilities, more fighter abilities. Paladins don't get spells till 3rd level. Clerics are a caster class. They get spells at 1st level. In the old game, they just had more fighter abilities and got spells later at a slower rate. Now, they've kind of branched them out, and they are champions. They're champions of a cause. One of those is holy. You can pick a god, you can kind of have domain stuff, but then you have ones that are like vengeance. That's kind of, Conan is a barbarian, but Conan was my village was destroyed. I am going to kill the orc horde.
So wouldn't vengeance still... I mean, that's not really a holy endeavor anymore,
it's not.
is it? So you can have unholy paladins.
You can have unholy paladins.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Sorry, not unholy. Not holy paladins. Because there are anti-paladins, which are unholy.
Paladins, yeah.
So, and then the third one is, I love, they made paladins for druids. You can be a paladin of the ancients, which you are a fighter for nature. Captain Planet! Like, literally, like, you put wood armor on yourself, you're swinging around wooden clubs and beating people up and calling the earth to help you. So, they've really made paladins champions of causes that they're so fanatical and dedicated that they get abilities based on that. And it's not always god-based. And the traditional paladin is that. They go out and they invoke a god, they invoke a cause. Vengeance are the Avenger type paladins where they're like, these people destroyed my homeland, I'm not going to rest until they're dead. Then you have the paladins of the ancients, which are, I'm the warrior for life, I'm the warrior for
continent,
oh, you are encroaching on nature and the ancients and this and that. If you've played World of Warcraft, very much the type of characters in
I've never really heard of an angry
elves.
paladin before. I kind of like that. So I always thought the paladins were kind of goody two shoes, like they were doing something.
Not all of them. Yeah. Now they've really diversified paladins.
Interesting. All right. So next is
Ranger, and again, this is another one of those classes that used to be very pigeonholed. So Rangers, they're the archers or two-weapon fighters. So that was their big thing. They either shoot from range. Actually, in the old system, they did both. They shot from range, or they used two weapons to fight. Then they got a little bit of druid spells, a little bit of druid magic, and then they also got animal companions. In this, they've diversified them so you can be the ranger that has animal companions, and lots of them. You're that ranger that's like the Beastmaster. I have the ferrets that go steal. I have the wolves that help me attack. Then I have the hawk that goes looks out for me, and Harry's, and yeah, all that kind of stuff. Then they have the ranger that's the hunter. I am the bow user who takes down beasts. Then you can have the ranger that's the little bit more magic user oriented, and there's a couple other really interesting ones in some of the expansions, which I'm not going to get into.
So Ranger's almost like a fill-in spot then. If you have some damage dealing, then he can be like the sneaker.
They are a fighter class. They do get a little bit of magic, but they also get a little bit of rogue abilities because they can stealth, they can track, that kind of stuff. So they are a fill-in. You can have them as your fighter if that's all you got, but they're all those other things. Also, if you play the Beastmaster Ranger, then you can have animals that do all the other things for you. I have the ferrets for thieving. I have the lion for fighter.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Great. And I am not a fan of pet classes. If you're familiar with MMOs, you know that term. They have pets. Those pets go and do things for you, and you can fill in other roles. I'm not a fan in tabletop RPGs of that because it's a lot more paperwork and a lot more things to figure out. You have one Beastmaster Ranger in your group. You have 3 players, but now you have 6 initiatives to worry about because of all these other animals running around and what they do and what their abilities are.
Makes sense.
But they are very interesting and they're very versatile.
Interesting. Next one is
this Rouge.
Yeah. No, Rogueway. I think it's Rogueway.
I'm going to let you
whatever it is
talk about rogues because you're the expert, and I'm pretty sure we all know where we're going to go with this.
So, if you've watched any of our videos at any point, I'm always a rogue. The rogue is a charismatic class, very dexterous. You can change it around. You can either be charismatic, you can be a liar, you can be a sellsword, you can manipulate things to get more money out of what's happening, or be the opposite, which is stealthy, quick, an archer. And that's usually what I play. I'm usually our group's sneaky thief, if you've ever played me Oblivion or Skyrim. So this time around I'm definitely going to be a rogue. I like it. I'm familiar with it. There's no reason not to be it. We still have a sorcerer, warlock, wizard to talk about, but the rogue is what speaks to me the most. It is the person who negotiates prices, the person that gets information, then robs the till. I can plant things on you. I can take things off of you. I can get the information I need from you by sweet talking you a little bit, that sort of thing. But when it comes down to combat, as long as it's a sneak attack, I can quadruple my damage dice sometimes by sneak attack. So for me, rogue is what I play. And in every group, you're going to need a couple of things. In my mind, you always need a rogue. So when we play like a regular game, there's usually a fighter, there's usually a cleric, there's usually a wizard, there's a monk, that sort of thing. Always a rogue. Do what you know, and do it good. Do it well, excuse me.
So, rogues, trap spotters, stealthy, get you into places, also steal from the party and are generally terrible.
Liar, make more money off the job, walk away from the job alive.
So these last three are very interesting, and I'm going to do them a little bit out of order. The order they put them in is sorcerer, warlock, and wizard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to do wizard first because it's the classical. Wizards are folks that learn the arcane magics, the arcane arts of how to manipulate reality to do what they want. And those are formulas. They're components, and they're not the same formulas. Like, cultures have different languages. They have different they come from different directions. But if you say the right words in the right ways with the right components and the right hand gestures, in your culture, you have figured out how to produce light from your hand or throw fire. Interestingly enough, this kind of works everywhere because magic has laws, and those laws can be learned based on how your culture approaches them. And wizards are...
Right?
Huh?
They can also be manipulated?
They can also be manipulated. So wizards are the folks that learn those formulas. They are researchers. They go out and they find the things that have already been tested to work, or they research the things that they want to know how to work. They go, I have a theory, I think we can do this if we do this type of somatic gestures, if we do these words, I can change reality in this way. And they can research that. So wizards are a staple class. They've been around since the very beginning when there was only 4 classes. There's only fighter, rogue, wizard, and cleric. And wizard has some crazy mechanics to it that have a lot of history just in Dungeons & Dragons and that kind of old school game system, which is they have a whole bunch of spells they know. They have a whole book of spells they know, just pages and pages of them. If they find someone else's book or they find someone that can teach them, they can write down that spell and learn it eventually. When they learn the spells, though, the brain can only hold, so much, and the mortal body can only expend so much magic. In the original game, every day when a wizard woke up, he had to memorize a number of spells, and as you gained levels and experience, as you became better at your job, you could hold more of that information. You could hold more complex spells, but it was literally 1 for 1. So if you could only remember 2 first level spells and you wanted, you're going into a fight that day, you would memorize Magic Missile twice, and you could cast that spell twice. They've freed it up a little bit later on, so now it's a little bit more versatile. Wizards are still the planners, though. You have to know what you're getting into. So you have so many slots per day of the various levels of spells, depending on your experience. Like, I know I can memorize 4 first levels, 3 second levels, 2 for third levels, and 1 fourth level. Say that goes like that. You go through your book and you go, these are the 4 first level spells I'm going to memorize. That's what I'm going to know for today for my first level spells. these are the 3 second level spells I'm going to remember for today, and the 2 third level spells and the 1 fourth level spell. Then you can, since you have that memory and you have that much power and magic, you can expend those slots however you want. So if you memorized Magic Missile, you could use it all 4 times. Or you can use Magic Missile and the Feather Fall you memorized, or this you memorized. You can even upcast them. So, you know what? I'm going to cast Magic Missile as my 4th level spell. And that takes that ability to you cast that 4th level spell.
And it's been my experience in our games that wizards and casters end up being banks of salvation, where I'm like,
so what's going to happen next?
Yeah, like,
and they
don't
go,
do anything.
Bam.
Like I'll keep hitting it. I'll keep shooting with an arrow, and now it's your turn. Like, please
do something
make
major.
one of these
they
5
have
things
a
work.
lot of power, but it's also very limited. And this is one of the big things about GMing, like DMing the game, is knowing, like, if I throw a fight against them early in the day and it's a really strong fight, then that wizard's going to be done. He's not going to have anything left to throw. So don't put 2 really hard encounters throughout your day. It really, like, dealing with the casters and their spell slots and letting them get them back or not is a big part of encounter building. But wizards are super versatile because their spells aren't just about combat. They can do all kinds of things. They can make people fly. They can make people invisible. They can completely circumvent your encounters if they have enough forethought about what spells they have, what they memorize, and what your encounter is. They can just go, okay, well, this is trivial now because I'm just going to cast an ability that negates the threat of this. I have Ice Wall. You have a lava pit underneath you. Okay, I'm going to cast Ice Wall over the pit, and there we go. We just walk across it. That kind of thing. So they're super powerful. They have to plan because they have an entire book of spells that they have. Some of them may not sound like they're going to help.
Actually, too, if you guys are new to the system, this is a...
That's just the paladin spells. Like, that's
goodness. This is
the wizard ones over there.
Paladin spells?
That's just...
That's
a not caster.
Like, man, that's
Tons.
just paladin.
The
just
clerics,
paladin.
the clerics, the wizards, and the druids, they have a double box. So it's 2 of those.
Casters, they end up being like this big. You're like, oh my goodness.
So, wizards they have a lot of versatility. They have a lot of spells in their repertoire. They can only memorize so many to use during a day, and then they only have so much power to cast those spells during the day. And that's why I wanted to start with that, because they're the most complicated, and the next 2 branch off of that. Sorcerers don't do any learning. They don't have to learn at all. They have it in their blood. Magic is just coursing through their veins, one way or another. And the bloodlines of sorcerer determines... I guess I should go back. Wizards being the studious ones, there are 8 schools of magic? Maybe 9? And then there's other disciplines in that. When you specialize, you go down 1. Like, abjuration is all about protection and shields and defense, where evocation is all about explosions and destruction. Mm-hmm. Illusion is all about illusion. Conjuration is always about bringing things to you, whether it's matter, like, I need a tool and I just do it, or I need something to fight that. I'm going to summon a demon in and it's going to fight that for me. Once you get higher level, you specify a school you're dedicated to, and that becomes like your mastery. So sorcerers just get their magic naturally. Think of a fire starter, like a pyromaniac, bursters and rifts. They just have something in their blood which gives them magic.
Weird old movie reference.
Right? But it's like
that makes sense. Yeah.
It's pyrotechnic. It's telekinetic. It's whatever. It's kind of like the superhero aspect where it's, I just know this ability and I can use it. So they have much more limited level of choice of spells. They pick spells and they just know those. Those are in their blood. They know them. Then they have their slots, and they can cast any of those abilities through those slots
So
at
what
any
would you
time.
say would be the plus to picking sorcerer over a wizard?
Ease of use. It's really
Just
if
more
you
and
want
more.
versatility, if you want to have to pre-plan, if you want to think your day through of, okay, we're going to break into a castle, I need to do this and this and this, then I need to do that. Sorcerers just say, I have this toolbox. I know how to throw fire, I know how to fly, and I know how to turn invisible. That's my 3 things I do, and I can use them 3-4 times a day. That's what I do. And their bloodlines, what's giving them their magic, give them their flavor, like wild magic. They have luck, they have abilities that they can amplify their magic, but it can also go horribly wrong and turn them into a plant or call a fireball down on
Not
them.
necessarily horribly well.
Then you have like dragon blooded. They have the lineage of a dragon and the natural magic users, and they get spells, but they become draconic. Like they get scales and become tougher. They can get a breath weapon. They get resistance to damage. Like I have the blood of a black dragon flowing through my veins, so I'm resistant to acid, and I now have a higher armor class.
No one's resistant to acid.
So, sorcerers are that superhero natural ability people. Because they're just naturally magical and wizards have to spend all their time studying, wizards are knowledgeable. They know about history. They know about the fundamentals of magic and magic items. That's not necessarily true with a sorcerer. They don't have to spend any time studying. They can just use their abilities. So they are more versatile skill-wise. They're the talkers. They're the, I can do this, I can do that, other stuff.
That's interesting.
Then you have warlocks. So warlocks are a very interesting class. Very interesting. They're like clerics, but they are not using the big gods. They're not going, okay, there's a god of tricks, and I believe that people need to be pranked to bring them down and show them humility. And this god has shown, like they've just put out these manuals, and I believe in it, and I say these things, and I do these things. I can change the fabric of reality and make my spells happen. Warlocks are personal. They have a patron. They went out and found a dragon. They found a lich. They found a demon, or something contacted them from beyond and says, I want you to do something for me, and I'll give you these powers if you do it. You can even be a warlock of gods, but you're not a cleric. You don't necessarily even believe in that god. That god may have just come down and said, hey, you, I want you to go do this for me.
Here's a
and
special
you're like,
weapon.
And like, here's a special weapon. Here's some abilities. You're just now my champion. You're like, I don't want to do this. I didn't sign up for it. You're a warlock at that point.
So
And
what would you
warlocks,
say would be, what are the advantages of being a paladin versus a warlock?
So warlocks only ever have 2 spell slots, period. You can only ever cast 2 spells in any given moment, any given combat.
Forever.
That's it. That's all you ever get. 2 all the way up to level 20. That's all you'll ever be able to do is use 2 spells. So you can have, and you start with only 2 spells. But as you go up in level, you'll learn 3, 4, 5, 6 others. But you can only ever use 2.
So does the warlock increase his fighting?
They get some
whatever
other
kind of
things.
warlock you want to be. Okay.
The warlock doesn't have to do anything for their powers, so they do other things. They get a whole bunch of other abilities. The first and foremost is because these powers are coming from someone else directly, and it's not your faith, it's not your will, it's not your knowledge going into that. It's always the most potent it can be coming through your vessel. So those spells are always cast at the maximum level that you are. So a wizard learns a magic missile, and that magic missile shoots 3 missiles. Okay?
And that's level 1.
And that's level 1. And if they want to, they can try to use more of their power. They have the formula. They can add more power to it and use higher level spell slots to cast that magic missile to shoot more missiles.
So even though a warlock is only level 4, his spell comes out at level
always
4.
level 4.
Wow.
Always, no matter what it is.
So, wow.
So
Wow.
you do 2 other things with warlocks. First, you pick a patron. that patron determines the kind of spells you have. Say you have a demon or a devil that is giving you your powers. He's made a devil's deal with you. That is a pact of a fiend, and you're going to have hellish abilities, fire and all this kind of stuff. But you can make a pact with a fae, like a Sylvan Lord from the Feywild. The Queen of Fairies or whatever could come down and give you. So you have beguiling magic and illusions. You can have some otherworldly Cthulhu-like god that you have learned about and is now channeling through you, and now you have mind-altering craziness.
So would you consider a warlock more of a fighter with a couple of spells?
So,
like, do you have to make a decision?
You have to make a decision, because the other one is this. So there's two choices. One is who's giving you the powers, which influences the type of powers you get. The other choice is what you're doing with your off time. What is it like you're doing for this entity? You have a task to do. So the three they give in this book, and there's a whole bunch more, but there's the Hexblade, the Chain, and the book. The book. I think it's the book. I can't remember. The Shadow Book or something like that. So if you're an astudious person, you're like, go out and learn all you can about this and tell me all this information. They'll give you a book, which is almost like a wizard's tome. And in that, you'll have cantrips. Now, they normally don't have access to cantrips, which are minor magic effects you don't use spell slots for. Anyone can use them. Just like a wizard, just like a cleric, just like a druid, now you have cantrips. And in that book, it'll start getting ritual abilities. And ritual abilities are more long-form spells. They take 10 plus minutes to cast, but they can have all the effects of a normal spell. Like, I need to summon a house to stay in tonight. Here I go. I need to summon something that's just going to go pick up things and fetch and carry for me. I have this ability. So they become a caster. Like the Pact of the Book becomes a caster type. And I'll explain another thing that amplifies these. The Pact of the Blade becomes a fighter type. The Pact of the Chain becomes a summoner, just like I was talking about the ranger that have animals. They have a familiar, and that familiar grows stronger with them. So they have a minion that they have to go out and do things with them. Then, just hold on, because I know you got questions.
I'm like,
then they get a laundry list of abilities. And every time they level, they can pick a couple of these and a little bit more of them unlocked. And depending on which pact they are, those get better. If I'm Pact of the Blade, I'm the fighter type. All of a sudden, I can call my weapon to me. I can make it do fire damage. Oh, I'm Pact of the Book. Then, the Pact of the Tome. That's what it is. Now I can start casting spells like as if I was a caster. I'm Pact of the Chain. Now my beast can attack. Now get stronger. And you take these abilities and you add them into your repertoire, and they start stacking on your chosen path. I'm the more fighter type warlock. I'm the more mage type warlock. I'm the more summoner type warlock.
So I'm not sure if it's just because it's the last class we've talked about, but what are some negatives of being a warlock? Because you've spoken at length about bonuses right now. You've made warlocks sound really cool.
You have a patron that you have to keep appeased. You're doing something, and these patrons are normally not nice.
Is it the GMs?
It's history. You have to make it up. So you have to get with them and pick it. There's a lot of people that just... If you're just going off this game and you just pick warlock and you don't want to deal with it, that's fine. This class is balanced to the other classes. It's just not going to do any more or less. It's a little bit front-loaded. It has a little bit more power at the beginning. And as you go up, you get stronger, easier, but you're still just as limited with those two spell slots. The thing is
that's the kicker.
That's the kicker.
Slots, no matter what.
No matter what.
Spell slots 2.
Now, they only need a short rest to get those back. So unlike wizards who can only get a couple spell slots back per short rest, and they get all their spell slots back.
Just get them back all the time.
Hey, give me an hour, and I can be just as combat effective as I was.
Interesting.
The thing is that from a GM standpoint, if you're not going along correctly, if you're abusing the power or whatever, that can all be taken away with you in a heartbeat. Every ability you have, every single ability you gain as a warlock can be taken away if you're not doing what your patron is wants you to do.
Are there any examples of like negative patron responses other than taking away? Like, it's like, no, you can't do these things.
There's not mechanical versions, but any mage is like, okay, I'm just going to take away.
You cast, now you have a beard.
No, not even randomness. Not even randomness, because they decide. I'm going to take away one of your spell slots. Or that weapon, like you're a Pact of the Blade, and you're a fighter type. Well, all the abilities from your weapon come from me, and I'm not going to support that anymore. So your weapon is a normal weapon now, and none of your abilities channel through it like they were before. Actually, if you watch Critical Role, one of the characters right now defied his patron. He threw his sword away into magma, and now he doesn't have any abilities. He doesn't have anything. He's pissed off his patron. So everyone else is like 12th, 13th, 14th level, and he is just a dude. Just a dude. Guy. So Warlocks, they are advanced class. I would not suggest taking them from the beginning. They sound really cool. Learn the system, learn the rules, learn the world.
It sounds really complicated too. Like we have to talk about
who's your patron, and you can, once you get into it and once you start learning the lore, you can make some great ones. I have some awesome Warlocks lined up in my games because I really enjoy the Warlock class, and it's mainly who they're working for and what they want you to do.
Interesting.
So, now that we've gone through that for 30 minutes, Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard. Those are the classes of core D&D.
Surprise, surprise, I took Rogue.
Rogue.
If you guys have ever seen any of our other videos, I'm usually our group's Rogue. I'm good at it. I know what's coming up. And it makes things easier when you really understand your character. And I do really understand who a Rogue is. I talk to NPCs about what we're going to do next. I negotiate payment. I sneak in. I find traps. I unlock doors, that kind of stuff. I'm usually in the front and scout a lot of times. So I can do some long distance attacks. Usually with this character, I haven't picked that yet, but at this point I have chosen sleight of hand, persuasion, athletics, and investigation as my
rogues have
rogue proficiency.
Rogues in this game, I think, even over bards, have the most skill selections. So they are very skill based. They're a skill based class, which is they're going to know the skills in this game are what you do or what you roll against to do everyday things. I need to climb this wall. I need to sneak past this guard. Wizards don't get that too much because they normally spend all their time in a dusty library. They're really good at history or knowing about how magic spells work, but not the practical stuff. Rogues have the largest skill selection, and they get the most amount of skills to be proficient in.
The handoff is I have 8 hit points. So if I can't dodge an attack, I'm pretty well fucked.
They don't have a lot of weapon proficiencies or armor proficiencies. They want to wear light armor to not interfere with their sneaking and other abilities. So that's the trade-off. They also get expertise, which even further solidifies their skill-based character design. So in this game, it's a D20 game. When you need to do something, you roll a 20-sided die, you read the result, you add a bonus based off of your characteristic, which we're going to get to next. Then you add a bonus if you're proficient in that ability, that skill that's being tested. Now, rogues can pick 2 of those abilities that they've picked that they're proficient in, and they will double the bonus they get from being proficient in it. So they're very skill-based. They're very good at rolling the dice to accomplish skills.
We're using D&D Beyond, and it did not give me that option.
Expertise is right there.
I already took it. Sleight of hand, persuasion, athletics, investigation. Expertise. Sorry.
Yeah.
My expertise. So for my expertise with D&D Beyond, I took stealth, which means I sneak better, I hide better, I
He doubles his proficiency anytime he makes a stealth roll. Thieves' Tools.
Another one is Thieves' Tools, which will help me unlock stuff. It will help me
disarm traps.
Counterfeit bills. Disarm traps.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, it's forgery. Sorry.
Forgery kit.
Disarm traps, unlock doors, and also like make sounds. I think. Can I like throw stuff?
No, I mean, it's pretty much disarming traps and picking locks. Is what Thieves' Tools allows you to do.
So that's all I really get to add bonuses to.
Yeah.
I do have sneak attack, which means that if somebody is not paying attention or if they're engaged in something else, I get to add dice to my
damage.
To my damage. And then I have Thieves' Cant, which means that if you and I were engaged in conversation, we could talk normally, but I could mean something different. Like, oh, how's business? Really means like, hey, where do I go to talk to the boss? It's like, oh, it's been normal. Normal business means go downstairs. It's been high volume, I go upstairs, that kind of thing. That sort of thing.
That kind of thing. You can hide meaning in conversation, and you understand signs and symbols that are placed around areas, knowing like, oh, this is a place that's frequently frequented by the guard. This is a place that's okay for you to let loose and talk about rogue stuff. So it's an entire underground language that criminals use, essentially. Both symbols they leave for people in areas and speaking to each other so that they can not get overheard and suspicious. Raise suspicion.
It's like pre-modern hobo sign in UA or USA. Jesus Christ, I say U of A. USA.
All right.
Next is score calculation.
So now we're getting to the characteristics. This is the standard D&D characteristics. So everything your character is, the core of yourself, you as a person, they divide into 6 categories. Go back up. Go back to the top. So manual.
Oh, that's right.
So this is how this is going to work. So everything you are as a person is divided into 6 categories for Dungeons & Dragons. This is to say, like, you're going to ride a horse. How good are you at that? It's a combination of your raw natural ability and how much training you have, which is a skill. The characteristics are 3 physical, 3 mental. Strength is raw power and strength. It also helps you in combat because you overbear an opponent and you do more damage. Dexterity, which is not only manual dexterity and how good you are with fine precision movements, but kind of how fast you are and how coordinated you are. Constitution is how healthy you are. It's how much punishment you can take, but it's also how resistant you are to diseases or outward effects upon you and exhaustion. Yeah. Like if I'm going to run 10 miles, it's not about my strength, it's about my constitution. Then going into the 3 mental based, you have intelligence, which is raw, memorization, categorization, and deduction. That is all based on intelligence. It's your mental strength. Wisdom is your mental dexterity, essentially. It can be a mental strength as well. It is your resistance to persuasion. It's your understanding of other people. It's your intuition. And then charisma is your raw personality, and we've talked about that. It's not just looks. It is, to give you an example, sorcerers, like wizards, use intelligence to cast their spells. Sorcerers use charisma. It's not about their personal will. It is about their personality exuding on the environment about them. And that is a big deal in this. Even outside of appearance, you can be hideous, you can be evil, you can be sinister, and absolutely terrifying and controlling of people, and that is charisma.
Charisma can also be your smoothness, how persuasive you are when you talk with somebody, how likely people are to believe what you say. That's charisma as
Deceit.
well.
So
Deceit.
Deception, persuasion,
and sorcerer spell.
Sorcerers, warlocks also use the same thing.
So we do something here at the Wileyverse.
So there are several ways in this book there's 3 normal ways to do this. A point buy system where they give you a pool of points and you put them into your attributes for different costs. The other way is a dice roll system, which is normally 3d6, and you roll 3d6, you roll it 6 times, and you put them where you want. Then there's an array where they just give you 6 scores, 6 numbers, and you put them where you want. You can use any of these systems. Old school, if you've watched our Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and even watched our TMNT, they talk about it. Old school is 3d6, giving you a score from 3 to 18 in each attribute, straight down.
But this can be bad sometimes because you
you can get a 3.
Really bad
so,
scores
10,
like fucking 18.
Oh my god, you rolled a natural 18 right off the bat. We could get terrible scores. He will never get this again, by the way.
Actually, take a picture.
This will never happen again. So
what a bad example.
Yeah.
No, put it back down. I gotta take a picture of this shit.
So in this game, 10 is an average human score. I should say average. It means you're not at a deficit. You're not great at it. It kind of sometimes it takes a lot to be average in things. So 10 is the average. The array they give you in the system makes you bad at one thing and good in the others. If you've watched my stream, I like things on the heroic side. I don't like below average characters, and there's a lot of people out there that absolutely disagree with me, and they're right. Characters with flaws are great, but the level of flaw to me is different, and giving negatives to someone who's supposedly a hero is not something I like to do unless they choose it.
I do love being an underdog, and I usually do roll low. I mean, other than that stupid roll right now. But I usually do roll low. So Wiley's method of doing 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 worse, because now I have some heavy stuff, I have some light stuff, but I'm not a failure at anything. I am a hero. I am a hero. He lets us roll heroes.
He's less good at some things than other heroes, but he's still good, better than most people. So to give you an example, the standard array, which they give in this game, which is the standard system of assigning your attributes, is 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15.
So that 8's really bad.
That 8 is super bad. Well, it's not super bad. It could be worse. But you could roll a 3.
I mean, right? You could also roll an 18.
If you listen to old school D&D players, the primary rolling method is 4d6, and you only use the highest 3. So it's 4d6 minus the lowest one. So you roll that 6 times, and you put those scores wherever you want.
So now we have 10.
That does...
Now you have 12.
Yeah, 12.
So the next roll would end up being way lower.
4, 10, 12. God, like, damn it. Now, there's a problem with this is someone can randomly roll all 9s, and someone can randomly roll all 18s. Mm-hmm. It's improbable, but it can happen. And then you have this... amongst the players, there's a disconnect. And that's why standard array is the way to go now with D&D. Rolling is fun. It's a great way to make characters. Go watch our Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. It's fun to roll randomly. Then go watch our TMNT game and watch that first character he rolled, which is garbage.
I rolled
it doesn't
frog
work.
Engineer.
Yeah.
There's no fun in that. There's no way for me to progress.
If you're first running this game, this 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 is great. In my games, I'm a more heroic game. My games are higher fantasy. They're not the real gritty games. So I do a standard array that is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. You put those numbers into your 6 ability scores and see where they go.
All right. So since I took a rogue, I'm going to go with 16 in my dexterity, because it makes me quick, it makes me agile, it makes me able to pick locks.
And
great.
Most rogue weaponry is about placement of hits and not the strength behind them. So they will use your dexterity to not only hit, but also for the additional damage, where fighters like barbarians and fighters need all strength because they power their attacks. You know, a rapier is about precision and where you put it. A battle axe is just putting as much force behind it as possible.
Next, I'm going to do charisma because I'm a liar. But I'm a rogue. I have to tell you that I want something. I have to negotiate prices. I have to negotiate payment when it's done sometimes too. Like, you know, hey, we'll do it for 20 gold. Bam, we finish. We come back. The guy's like, give you 10 gold. I'm like, you said 20. I've got to be clever enough to get the full amount of money. So charisma.
His third.
Next is always wisdom.
Wisdom is perception. Whoa, what just happened? Lucid Abstract.
What?
Thank you for the host.
What?
What?
Hey.
Welcome back, Lucid Abstract.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's always good to see you.
Thanks for being here.
So I always take wisdom because, first off, there's a lot of stuff associated with it, but specifically in Wileyverse games, perception is really important, and wisdom is part of that.
And wisdom is also your resistance against deception. Mm-hmm. So not only is it the thing that allows you to see things, it is also see things physically. It allows you to not be deceived, and it's generally what things will go against for your willpower. If someone tries to frighten you or intimidate you, it's based off wisdom.
So it makes sense as somebody who's a talker and a thief to have some wisdom. So having said that, intelligence will be next.
Lucid Abstract. So intelligence is knowledge, abilities, knowing about nature, knowing about history, knowing about religion. If you took those skills, but he's good at it anyway. Next
to last would be strength. I'm not really powerful, but I'm also probably pretty light. You know, I'm a half elf. I'm not really big or fat or anything like that. And then finally, constitution.
That's his dump stat. In these games, a dump stat is what you put your lowest score in and what you think you're not going to use. But people do different things. In his case, strength is a dump stat because he's never going to roll it for attack or damage. But if a building falls on him, it's going to be strength that gets him out of it.
Or if I have to lift another character from a hanging position, I'm going to need some strength.
Constitution is if he's running from the town guard, or how many hit points he has. He can't stand up in a fight. He can't stand up in a fight. He can't stand up running.
So my idea is that my charisma will talk me
get him out of that
fight
situation.
So let's see what happens next.
Okay.
All right. Next, description. Xerinax's
description is interesting because then you go into backgrounds, and this game has several backgrounds, and backgrounds is a new thing for Dungeons and Dragons. They kind of introduced it in 4th and a little bit in 3.5 or 3. Background is what background did you come from? Where did you get raised? What did you do before you were an adventurer? And what skills and abilities do you have from that life? It can be all kinds of things, but in the main book, backgrounds, there are. They're not going to put them in order. There are only so many. If there's one thing I actually say that you should start looking into, if you're going to go outside of the main book, the classes and their branches and their specialties are a great way to go. Getting more backgrounds is crucial because if you're getting to a group that is wanting to delve into character development and know who their characters are and where they came from, this is what does it. And this is very nuanced in the fact that you have to realize that this is the last thing you're choosing, but it's what your character was before they were the class they picked. What were you before a rogue? You were this. And then you can come up with what caused that.
It's really, it doesn't only make role-playing fun, or easier, I should say, but it does make the game more fun. I know who I am. I know where I came from. Yeah. So then when you're faced with questions and probabilities and options, you can role-play your character. Like, I was a sailor, so when you say, go by boat or go by a mountain. I'm like, I say by boat. I was a sailor. That kind of stuff. It makes things easier. It makes things roll a little smoother. It also gives the DM the options. Yes, gives the DM options to write things in for us.
And purely mechanically, even if you're a new role player, you're not going in for I'm going to act this out or whatever, and you're just looking for the substantial qualities that let you roll dice better, this fills out the rest of your character. You're like, I want to be the fighter, but I'm sneaky. I was a coward. I deserted my friends. I also stole a lot. You can be a fighter and then pick criminal as your background. And that's going to give you stealth. That's going to give you the ability to use thieves' tools. So you're going to be a thief fighter kind of right off the bat. You can be like, I'm going to play a bard, but I lie about everything. I make up personas. I try to get into the fanciest balls and eat all their food and steal all their stuff. Or get them to give me money and shower me with my performance. You could be a charlatan bard. There's several of these.
There's also several.
To give you an example, Grace of Candlekeep was an acolyte. He was he grew up in a temple of learning, a library essentially, where he was copying books all day. But he was never a good thinker, even though that was ingrained in him. He became a fighter. He just I want to move the books. I want to do physical things. I want to run. I want to punch things. But he grew up in a library, so he was an acolyte, and he knew history. He knew these kind of things. So it really diversifies your characters and puts some additional abilities on that sheet.
You can also
outside of it.
Subclasses as well, where I've played a...
Yeah, that's third level.
Yeah, all right.
For most things.
So
Swashbuckler, and there's, once you get to third level, for most classes, there's some that happen at second level, there's some that you get right off the bat. You specialize in a type of class, and we're going to get to that.
Arcane trickster, I've been
a magic user rogue.
Yep.
Swashbuckler is the fancy duelist rogue. Then there's assassins, who are the murderer rogues. They have those all across this game. In all the different ones. Your pact for the warlock, which we talked about in length, that comes at third level. So you're just a warlock up until you get third level, and then you're a warrior warlock. Then you're a ritualist warlock. So, but the backgrounds give you a little bit more right at the start. So, are you going with sailor?
Am I going with sailor?
Yes. Yeah. Or pirate. Either one.
I will be a... Is that what you want me to be a pirate?
Either one. I don't care.
I'll be a pirate.
Is it... I'm sure it's in there. I just want to make sure it's in here. Because I want to do... I want to do... It's not in here.
Have the option.
So do sailor.
All right, sailor?
Yeah. So
I
he's...
can't take it or anything, but...
You can. You're out of there. Hit this. This. Edit.
Creations first, my characters, then edit.
Yeah, you're good there. So
there we go.
Go to description. This is D&D Beyond, by the way. Scroll over description. You put a name in, but you forgot the other thing. Background. So sailor is what he's going to pick because he plays water-based characters. He loves sailing.
Acolyte, criminal, folk hero, haunted, noble, sage, soldier.
All right, so pick from that then.
Folk hero.
So that's a weird one. Don't pick that. Folk hero is
soldier.
Folk hero is to give an example. Folk hero is you stopped an ox from running over old lady Mavis in your tiny village. Mm-hmm. Now everyone thinks you're the hero of their village and destined to become a warrior of legend type of thing. It's a weird background. So he's picking soldiers. So he used to be a soldier. He used to fight in a war, but he probably took things. He's a rogue. He hid. He didn't want to be up there fighting, but that gives him. So where did you get sailor? It's a basic. Because you don't have D&D Beyond subscription.
I don't.
So you have basic. So that's a good thing to do. Baby. So soldier, actually, it's going to give
we're
him...
selling D&D Beyond to each other right now.
I really wanted to get the sheet printed out. I wanted you to write it if we didn't have the sheet.
I actually wanted to get this just so I could have the encounter calculator, which is really nice.
So soldier, they get athletics and intimidation. So that's what soldiers do. They run around all day and they bully people. Then they learn how to use one type of gaming set. So they're either good at dice, they're good at chess, they're good at cards.
I chose cards.
Then they can pilot vehicles. They know how to run a cart or ride a horse. The background will also give you a whole bunch of options to delve deep into your character about personality traits and flaws and bonds to other people. It gives you a special ability. In this case, it's military rank, which will allow you to encounter other people of your military, either whether you're retired or AWOL or whatever. That gives you an encounter level with them, what you were, and you can even roll specialty. This gives a whole bunch of other things. Who's that? Hi, Fishchin.
Hey, Fishchin.
Welcome back. This is Wiley vs. Mitch, D&D. We're
learning how to play D&D.
Talking in length about basic Dungeons and Dragons for beginners.
I made a rogue sailor.
A rogue soldier.
Rogue soldier.
So,
come back tomorrow when I play a rogue sailor.
What's next is equipment.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have any options here.
Yeah, you do. For equipment. So you can either, if you're advanced enough, you can just roll some coin and you'll get an amount of money and you can buy your equipment from scratch from the level up. It's pretty complicated. There's a lot of things going on. There are also packages based off of your class and your background that will just give you choices, and you can pick that as you go along.
So since the options are labeled here, I'll just read them out. I have the option between a rapier or a short sword. I'll take a rapier. I have a short bow and a quiver of 20 arrows, or another short sword if I want to fight with my offhand, but having some distance is always good, so short bow. Then I have the option between a burglar's pack, a dungeoneer's pack, or an explorer's pack. A burglar's pack obviously has things that help me break
crowbars,
in. Help me manipulate doors and windows, that sort of thing. A dungeoneer's pack has extra rations, water,
torches.
Rope, torches for sure. And then an explorer's pack is kind of in between.
It's the camping pack.
So since I was a sailor, I'm going to go ahead and take explorer's pack so that I have something to kind of camp with, do that sort of stuff. My soldier starting equipment gives me the option between a dagger, a broken blade, or a piece of banner.
Oh, did you go and see his thing? Was it not amazing and complicated and crazy?
The cold lair.
Yeah. So he came in and he said he was running his first D&D game, and he was going to run a kobold lair. And I had just watched.
Oh yeah.
I just watched this guy that's going. He's going through goblins. He's going through kobolds, and he's saying this is how they operate. They're cowards. They're tiny little creatures. Like, people use them as fodder in their games, but if you're getting run into their lair, they have it set up against you. This is where they live.
It's a dungeon, but it's more of like a trap.
It's rough. It is like, even listening to the guy talk about him running through his game through it, it's rough, man. Those kobolds are nasty. Great. Did your player survive?
While we wait for Christians, all good. Soldier starting equipment involves a dagger, a broken blade, or a piece of banner. I'm actually going to choose a piece of banner so we can just come up with some sort of story, like, there's a regiment that I was part of. We failed miserably. We were scattered. Now I'm on my own, obviously, but I have a piece of that banner to remind myself that I had spent some time in the war. The last thing is a set of bone dice or a deck of cards. I chose proficiency in cards, so I'm going to take a deck of cards. There we go.
So, as for that, besides picking personality traits from background and going deeper into the character and asking 20 questions about what they are, that's the character. You can hit the character sheet button, and that's it.
So I'm there
you've
now.
Got all of the proficiencies and all the abilities.
Unfortunately, I know it's not showing up on the camera, so I can say that my strength is 12, which gives me a bonus of +1. My dexterity is 17, bonus of +3. Constitution 11, bonus of 0. Intelligence 13, bonus of 1. Wisdom 15, bonus of 2. and charisma is 17, and bonus of 3. So I'm very agile, very quick, very apt with my hands. I'm also very beguiling. I can talk to people. I can do what I need to do. I can get information out of you. I can also falsify information to you.
So, to go into the mechanics of it real quick, this is a D20 game, which, as I said before, you're going to roll anytime you take an action, which is what? Don't do it.
I have no items equipped.
Yeah, because you didn't do it. So up here, edit. Go back to your equipment, and then wield, wear, all that stuff. So this is a D20 game. You're going to roll a D20 anytime success has a consequence, or how well you do matters. So you roll the 20-sided die. It gives a result of 1 through 20. If you're a mathematician out there, this is probability steps in the increments of 5. So rolling a 1 is a 5% chance. Rolling a 20 is a 100% chance. If you multiply 5 by whatever you roll, that gives you a percentage. So success is based on that level. You roll this die, and you're going to add your proficiency or your ability into this. If I was asking him to roll a stealth check, he's going to roll and add his dexterity bonus in and his proficiency in stealth. And that's going to give him a number probably between 7 and 26. So really well or fairly well. Like, he can't fail too bad. The characteristics, I said, were between 1 and 18. That's what you can roll in the beginning. Actual characteristics for a normal character are between 1 and 20. And I told you 10 was an average, so there's a chart in here. You can just go look up and it'll tell you the bonus or the negative any attribute has to a roll. For example, 10 has nothing. It doesn't add anything to a roll. If you're just average at something, you're just rolling this die, and that's what it is. But as you step up above 10, you're going to get bonuses to rolls on that attribute because you're naturally better at it. As you go below 10, you're going to get negatives. If you're a real nerd and you want to know the numbers, it's for every 2 points above 10, it's a +1, another +1, or every 2 points below, it's a -1, or you can go take your attribute -10, divide by 2. So 10-11 +0, 12-13 +1, 14-15 +2, 16-17 +3, 18-19 +4, 20 +5. And then 9-8 is -1 all the way down to -5. The dungeon did not contain as many traps as kobolds usually use because they're normal sized sorcerer leader. He needed to be able to walk in the dungeon without getting... he was a medium sized kobold. That makes sense because normally they make the traps that they can run under. Very, very interesting background to that. That's cool that you did that. I'm glad that helped. Glad that it helped you. Goblins are another one of his good ones that he put out. Interesting one. Goblins are cowards though, so their layers are traps. They're not as intricate, but they go out and try to hunt for things. So they will lay traps for people outside as ambushes, and it's really cool. So what's the next thing? What are they going through next? Are they still dealing with kobolds, or are they stepping up? So, he's got his character. It's all filled out. He's got these stats. Those stats tell him his raw natural ability and different abilities, and then he has proficiencies and skills which give bonuses. At first level, your proficiency bonus, if you know a skill, it's +2. So pretty, it's a +10% chance if you're doing the math to any skill that you're proficient in. It's just a bonus right across the board. This also works for weapons. So every class has a list of weapons or weapon groups that they're proficient in. If you have proficiency in a weapon and you attack with it, you get that +2 bonus. If you don't have that proficiency, you don't get that bonus. Each weapon type has... You can either add strength. Almost all melee weapons, anything you attack with your hand, you can add your strength into to hit and to damage. But if it's a finesse weapon, you can use your dexterity instead of your strength bonus because you're using it to place shots in specific targeted areas to do the most damage. And that replaces both the 2 hit bonus and the damage bonus. So you would roll dexterity bonus plus proficiency bonus if you have proficiency. Or strength bonus if it's any other type of weapon or your strength is higher. So
character's made.
Character's made. What's his name?
Faldair.
Faldair, the half-elf rogue, former soldier, finds himself in a pretty rough and tumble city. I'm not going to name any names. It's not important. This is just a small city, kind of rough, and he's found himself on the seedier side of town because he doesn't have much coin, and he's looking to fix that. He walks up and he orders something, but he has no money to pay for it. So after a bout of trying to persuade, let's get a persuasion check. See how well liked you are from this guy. The bartender is a toothless human.
7
total. So what did you roll?
I rolled a 5.
So he rolled a 5.
Persuasion bonus of 2.
And his charisma...
I rolled a 2. I have a persuasion bonus of 5.
He rolled a 2. His charisma bonus is +3. He's proficient in it, so he has a +2 to that. So he rolled a 2, and he has a +5 total, and that gave him a 7. A very, very subpar roll. So
considering my bonus at level 1, that's pretty shitty.
And 7 is a really good bonus. So below 10, like if it's the lowest difficulty in this game, if it's an easy thing, it's normally in the 6 to 8 range, because that gives you more than a 50-50 chance. That gives you an 8 would give you a 60% chance. Of difficulty of 6 would give you a difficulty of 6 would give you
Would be like a 40%.
It's way more than that. That's what's throwing me off right now.
Oh, you're doing it reverse. I gotcha.
So a 6 would give you a...
It would be a 12% chance.
Nah, not even that.
6.
So 5, 10, 6, 30. It'd give you a 70% chance. So you'd have
yeah. I'm also doing it
70% chance if it was a difficulty of 6. 70% chance of success, really well out in the world. If it was a 8, it would give you a 60% chance. Again, if it was a 10, that's a 50% chance normally, and your proficiency gets to fluctuate that because you're getting. If you're proficient, that's +10 right off the bat. That's +2 to the roll, +5% each. If you're looking at it, the percentages, and then your ability adds to that as well. Each point of your ability is another +5.
So that's how I end up with a +5.
Yeah, you ended up with a plus. You have +2 for proficiency, +3 for charisma bonus. You have a +5.
But I rolled a 2.
But you rolled a 2. So he failed. The guy doesn't like him, and the guy's sneering at him, going, "All right, come in here, drink for free. All right, no, that's fine. That's fine. You see that stairway over there? Right, there's some quality class liquor down there. I just have some varmints. You said you're a soldier, right? You go down there, clear out the varmints. I'll let you drink the whole barrel."
I'll do what I gotta do for some free wine. I'll take a stab at these beasts you say are down there.
All right. So you're walking over, and you walk up, and you see that in the back of this tavern, in this seedy inn, in this kind of large, dirtyish town, there's a stairway down. And then you look over, and you see another stairway down on the other side. So he's pointing you to a specific one. He's watching you. He's like, yeah, that one right there.
To the left or the right?
Right.
Right. All right. As thievy as I am, I'm not about to get a free drink on purpose. So I'm gonna go down, or on accident, excuse me. So I'm gonna go down there and I'm gonna stab some rats.
Okay. So you're heading down the right, and this is a very cramped corridor down. Old stone work. You know, barely carved into here. They just did what they could, and you're scraping your arms heading down here. The light from the lantern that's hung in the hallway right outside is the only illumination you have, which is enough for your dark vision. So you can see down the 60 feet below you, and this goes down for like 35, 40 feet. The stairway goes down. You feel it's way deeper than any cellar you've ever been in before.
Can I smell or detect animal life? Is he telling me the truth, or am I walking into a trap?
A perception check.
Oh, perception! He makes us percept all the time. Oh, 8 plus 4. Damn it, 12.
12. That's still a very good roll. That's a
more
plus,
than 11.
Yeah. So that's an 80. You got 120. The other way around. Whatever. 12 times 5 is
70.
70. So you got 70% out of 100.
Yes.
That's a good roll.
Bingo.
Good percentage. So
corpse market.
Necromancers.
That's actually a really good idea. A corpse market.
There's also, by the way, that's something that would have come up later on in our game. There's some great stuff that Matt Colville talks about in his games, but one of them is a guy that has deals with folk, especially innkeepers in places like that, places of ill repute, that they have a deal with this guy, and the moment anyone dies in their establishment, this person just shows up with some skeletons and a corpse cart, and he takes the bodies.
Well, it's the collector in the Avengers. You should let me pay you for your skeleton now, so when you die, we'll collect on your death. You're like, wait a minute, what? Just sell you my body? Sure, here's $50. That might be a necromancer sell thing right there.
Look up.
That's what I said. Corpse market was the whole thing, like you sacrifice yourself based on your skills.
Look up Evernight online. Evernight, Shadowfell Evernight. It's a city in the Shadowfell, but it talks about things just like that.
Christian, that's a cool fucking idea.
Yeah.
All right, continue.
So, you rolled a 12, above average roll, and you smell it's dank down here, and there's the faintest smell of that sickly sweet rot smell.
So I'm going to sneak the rest of the way down the stairwell.
Roll it.
Rolling stealth.
Man,
Jesus
roll
Christ,
other dice.
Man. All right, we get another dice here.
I'm telling you, man. You want to forsake these, but
I don't want to forsake. God damn it. See, you're making me waste them. 17.
Right. So he rolled a 10. He rolled a 10, and there is superstition behind dice. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise.
We've been playing a Dragonborn campaign for almost a year. These copper dice are my copper Dragonborn dice. They're great. They're good. They're wearing out on the edges.
Have fun fishing. Seriously, if you need anything else, I think you're following me. Send me messages. You can hit me up. I can give you some of my other social media. If you're looking for information about how to run a game or ideas, or like you have that corpse market idea, I can give you tips about that.
Yeah.
It's really cool stuff.
We're also super big on feedback. Like if you come around and talk, yeah, absolutely. He'll catch the rest of us too. We'll toss any idea you give to him. We'll toss around as a group, and then you'll get the best answer out of it.
So you got a 17 to stealth, which is really great, but the stairway ends in a small little round landing with a plank wooden door. The plank wooden door, like, it is not very well put together, but it has a bar across it. So, like, out of the stone on the side, little handles come up, and a wooden bar is set there.
Can I check that for traps?
You can check that for traps. If you are new to D&D, even if you're not a rogue, if you're in a dungeon setting, if you're anywhere, if you're about to open a door, if you're about to walk down the hallway, just say, also I'm looking out for traps. Just make that a habit. There's some GMs out there that don't assume that, or that are against the players, and if you don't say it, you don't do it. But it's a staple, especially in dungeons, which is half of Dungeons and Dragons, that these places are trapped. That is one of the big three. There's social encounters, there's combat encounters, and there's traps. So
also,
always look for traps.
As someone who's DM'd a couple times, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, trap every third or fourth thing, just for fun. But you gotta get your crate, you got a fucking door, you got a window, fucking trap every third thing. Write it down though, don't cheat. Remember that you write it down and like, oh, you look at it, blah blah blah. But this guy cheats.
So perception to check for traps. Some people say investigation. I do perception.
Natural 1. Okay. Welcome to the stream.
So he natural 1. Now,
this is it.
I'm going to say that in the rule book, natural 1s on skills don't matter. Natural 1s and natural 20s only matter in combat. They will either make you fumble or they'll make you crit.
But that's no fun.
So a lot of home rules are you do fumble success, or fumble failure and fumble critical success on skills. And I've read something that I'm implementing in the game tomorrow night. Fumble initiative, critical initiative.
Critical initiative.
So
we'll talk about that tomorrow.
We'll talk about that tomorrow when I talk about what rules I'm going through and when I set up the stream. But in this case, it's already a failure, and I'm going as rules off this, and it's pretty late in the evening already. So he just fails, so you don't see that there's a trap.
Perfect. So people might not know, if you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, when you get a 20, it's critical success. In other words, it's like if I was going to strike, I strike well.
You do
get
double
20,
dice damage.
A double dice damage. If you fail, though, usually the GM
you
makes
drop your weapon,
else.
you hurt yourself.
You break your lock-picking tools.
Well, no, that's... So, in the game, there's only crit fail and crit success in combat. So either you hurt yourself, you drop your weapons, whatever, or you do double dice damage. That's based off this rules. So, but most tables I've found, every game I've ever played in, if you roll natural 1, natural 20, or the lowest possible roll or the highest possible roll with whatever dice system, it is a critical success or critical failure in that game, and the GM describes it accordingly.
So, describe this critical failure.
It's not a critical failure. I'm just using... I just
fail.
So you just fail. 2 gin bottles! It would be. Are you still at Thirsties?
So, I search for traps. I find nothing.
You find nothing.
Okay.
As I said before, which you didn't get, and you, as a GM, should never give away anything. You should always say, if someone's searching for traps and they fail the roll, just say, it looks clear. But I specifically said, you do not find the trap.
I don't find the trap. So my character, taking that character knowledge into play, is going to attempt to open the door.
Okay. So you lift up the bar across the door, and that immediately goes, and the bar is, it's got two little hooks, right?
Of course it's
so what I'm talking about with the barred door is there's 2 hooks come out, and there's a wooden plank around it, so the door physically can't open.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't push it against it. But he's lifting that bar out, and those hooks go... And then the stones, there's a bunch of stones, like cobblestones above the door, on both sides, just go...
Can I use my movement action to dodge?
You cannot...
Because I'm not that high of a level.
You are going to make a dexterity saving throw, and that brings in a key thing in this game. So we've already talked at length about active skills when you roll and you have proficiency in this, but there are things that happen to you and your character reacts to. It's just like someone tries to charm you, someone tries to frighten you. You are just relying on your base instinct, your base ability.
You have passive bonuses.
You have passive bonuses, and those are called saving throws, and some of those saving throws are specialized for your class. Like, you're really good at it, and rogues are really good at dexterity saving throws. They're really good at reacting real fast and getting their hands out of the way or jumping.
So when he says dexterity saving throw, what I'm really doing... Saving throw. When he says dexterity saving throw, what I'm really doing is I'm dodging...
He's dodging this weapon. So... In this game, attacking or taking an active motion, you would roll a skill check or an ability check. If something happens to you and you feel as a GM that you need to resist in some way, that's when you call for a saving throw. And there is a saving throw for every stat. There's a saving throw for intelligence, there's a saving throw for charisma, there's a saving throw for strength.
And it's based on skill level, so like my dexterity is 17, my wisdom is 15. There's a difference in our saving throws.
Yeah.
But
and then you also have proficiencies in different saving throws based on your class.
Luckily, my dexterity saving throw is +5, so no matter what I roll on this 20, I'm getting +5. So I'm going to roll a 1. I rolled a 3. I got an 8.
You get hit by a bunch of rocks.
I got hit by a bunch of rocks.
So
let's roll damage from the rocks.
So, saving throws in most games are, if you fail, you take the full amount of damage, whatever it is that the trap is set up for, whatever the encounter is set up for, whatever the effect of the spell is. If you save, it either does one of two things. It either does half the damage, which is normal. You know, you can never fully get out of the way of some things, like a fireball or something like that. Or you take no damage. If you succeed, you just get out of the way. So in this case, he failed, so he's taking the full 2d6 damage.
So before he rolls, one of my favorite things about Dungeons and Dragons is that the DM is usually behind a screen, so he can fudge the numbers.
So, and that's a.
It's a weird caveat of Dungeons and Dragons, and I think we should address it a little bit.
There's a weird caveat. If you're DM and you're watching this to see how you do this, fudging the numbers is a hugely, hotly contested and debated thing about gaming. And I have my side, and other people have their sides, and they're going to tell you what they want. But I would say go watch Matt Colville's video on fudging dice, and what it means and how the game runs and what the history of it is, and understand why you would do it or not do it before you watch any other person's video. If you're and also know your players. If they're in a hardcore game, if you have a bunch of people that play Dark Souls, don't fudge your numbers. Roll it out in front of everyone.
Right,
Let things happen. I have to say, in that situation though, have your players have 2 or 3 characters rolled and ready to go.
And I have a weird dichotomy for this where I hate handouts. I like to earn everything that I get. So if I roll and I fail, I want the punishment. However, having GM'd a couple of games, when my players fail their rolls and it's going to kill them or it's going to let the boss get away, I like to fudge. I want the game to continue. I want everybody to have a good time.
And I'm not going to
since we're playing Wiley versus Mitch, and this is an end-all, say-all,
I'm not going to get into the Matt Colville, whether you should or not. It goes into history and it goes into mentality. It's an amazing listen. Even if you decide whichever way you decide at the end, you need to listen to what he says and his history of it and what it's about. What fudging the dice is about and why it's such a prevalent thing and such a hot topic. It's a great listen. So,
it's really,
you take 4 damage.
I was gonna say it's very personal. Like the DM dice are probably the most personal thing in the game. Ugh. All right. Bah.
So this stones basically the entire top of the doorway, which is the threshold, and the stones above it were just up there with like sticks, and lifting that hit a lever and it fell on both sides. Just crash down, and you get knocked in the arms, bruised on the shoulder. You're like, oh! And to tell you all what just happened to him, he had 8 hit points, right?
No, I have 4.
And now he has 4. So he took half his health in 1 hit from that trap.
They're big stones.
Yeah,
it's hard. All right, so I'm assuming the way is more or less clear in front of me now.
The door is pretty much fallen off its hinges. It was just propped up there to be a part of this trap, which is so if someone moves that bar, everything falls down in this doorway.
So what am I looking at in front of me now as far as the room is concerned?
The room is concerned, it widens out and opens up into kind of a catacomb. This is a little bit of an open space. There's some niches on the wall, which look like they have old, not even full, like kegs and burlap sacks, but they're all
poor offerings.
Super old. Like the kegs have rotted out long ago. They're not even rotted anymore. They're just dry, broken, dusty wooden planks around wooden end with a rusted brass tap. Burlap is eaten out by moths. Hardly anything left. So,
do I see any evidence of modern interference or footsteps, that sort of thing?
Make an investigation.
Oh, damn it.
Investigation.
Sometimes it's cool to roll.
So perception is, what do I see? What happens? What do I find out just about the sense coming about me? If you start asking specific questions, what can I learn from the environment around me? Natural 1?
6.
Okay. No. It could be, it could not be. You can't really tell that well.
I'm so mad at my dice. It's not my dice's fault, it's my hands, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to start bringing like a chainmail glove and just roll the dice like that.
My buddy Scott, who you have played with, will not touch his dice.
Mm-hmm.
They get picked up by other things. They get dropped into dice towers.
Oh, I should do that. Hang on.
You need to buy a dice tower.
No, let me see. Watch this. See if it's right.
Natural 20. And you just wasted that natural 20.
Fuck you.
All right.
God damn it.
We'll say that because you're investigating, you're like, you rolled a pretty low roll. You're walking into the room, like, to look around and see if this is, if people have been in here. And you kind of walk in because you rolled pretty low. Something comes out of the darkness at you, and we're going to use that as your initiative roll.
20.
So you got a 20 for initiative. There's a form coming out at you. It's kind of like it's clattering. It's swinging wide. It's got this large, just cudgel thing in its hand, but it has no flesh on its bones anymore, and just pieces. Who's that going on? Green dog? Yeah.
It was. It's super
again,
stupid.
Super superstitious, and he tries not to believe in it, but don't touch your dice anymore. Don't do it.
My problem is I notoriously roll low. Like, this
group, they're all new players. If you watch our Wednesday game, 2 of them are new players. We've had a dwarf character in one of his games, one of my games, get poisoned twice.
Yeah.
He rolled 2 natural 1s to resist poison on advantage. He had advantage for the roll, and then on his, he failed his advantage roll.
This video is supposed to be informative. It's a lesson Has nothing. We're not even playing. These characters will never go anywhere else. 3, 2, 1. Like I rolled a natural 1. Right now, an informative video. I rolled a 1.
So.
And then he's like, go, don't touch it. 20.
So, you got a natural 20 on you, like, you're looking down, and all of a sudden, something comes out, and you're like, ah! And you just react perfectly fast. Your initiative roll is a 20. The thing coming out at you...
An attack of opportunity?
No. So, the skeleton's coming out, and this is a great time to discuss this. As I said before, in the core rules, only attack rolls of natural 1 or natural 20... including spells, but attack rolls and spells do a critical fumble or critical success, critical hit. Most tables will do that for skills as well, but one thing it falls limp on is initiative, and initiative is determining your order of combat for all the players involved, all the enemies involved. As a GM, as a DM, you should roll once per group of enemies, so if you have a horde of goblins and a hobgoblin leader, well, once for the hobgoblin leader, once for the horde of goblins. But folks can feel like they waste 20s. They roll a 20 on initiative, they go, wasted that, I could have rolled to attack with that. So if you're going to put the 20 and the 1 as great rolls and bad rolls, and you're going to do that for everything, do it for everything. And this is not in this game, but I'm going to do it right now. And it's something that we're going to start tomorrow in our stream on Wednesdays. If you roll a natural 20 on your initiative, you have advantage on your first action. Bingo. And that's advantage that always supports you. So even if you cast a spell that has a saving throw, or you do something that causes someone else to roll, they have disadvantage. Or you have advantage.
Just going to rape here.
But here's... So he's going to pull out his sword, which is a bonus action, and he's going to strike at the thing. He is a rogue, and so he's rolling with advantage now because he rolled that 20. He's just getting the jump on it.
Advantage means
you roll 2d20, and you pick the highest one. This is this game's version of... so in crunchier games, as we talked about before, you would start adding minute bonuses. +1 for cover, +2 for this, +1 for that. This game says you either have advantage or you don't. You either have you have the edge on the other person, or you don't.
I will say this is what makes D&D very easy.
So fast and so
everything's
easy.
20s. These everything else is for damage and bullshit, whatever.
Charts.
All of this is for success or failure.
If you have advantage, you roll 2d20s. You take the highest one. If you are at a disadvantage, you roll 2d20 and you take the lowest, and that's it. You either have it or you don't. If something gives you advantage and something gives you disadvantage, you don't have either. If something gives you 3 advantages and one thing gives you 1 disadvantage, you don't have either. If something gives you 3 advantages and nothing gives you disadvantage, you just have advantage. It's super simple, and it sways the odds perfectly. It's such a great way to go about it.
So my bonus gave me a 20 to hit.
So he rolled a
15.
So, and he has a +5 to hit.
So
proficiency is 2, +3 from his dex for his rapier.
So now I roll damage.
This thing has a 13 armor class, and almost every creature in the game will give you that. Average human, just being around, or average creature will have a 10. Armor or speed will increase that, and that's how hard you are to hit.
Just like my dexterity.
Yeah, your dexterity.
Bonus to hit, but it also gives me bonus
to dodge.
Yeah.
But if you wear heavy armor, you lose the ability to move, and you just gain raw ability to take hits and not get hurt by them. So there's a trade-off. If you're wearing heavy armor, as this game does by the rules, you start losing the ability to add your dex, but you just gain a higher bonus to your armor class. And creatures have a mix. So you'll see that in their entries. The skeleton that he's facing has an armor class of 13 because it's just a normal thing that's moving around, so it only has a 10, but it has armor scraps on. It's got its old clothing, it's got its old armor, so it has a 13.
Just don't hit it in the helmet. Don't hit it in the helmet.
So.
All right. So the damage that I deal is 1d8 plus 3.
But he had advantage on this roll, and he has a rogue. And rogues have an ability called sneak attack. Anytime they have advantage on a roll, they will add an additional dice bonus to their attack as they place it just perfectly. They know how just to destroy or hurt something. In this case, he's a skeleton. He's attacking its joints. He's mucking up its workings.
So at my level, I get to add a d6. So my total damage is 1d8 plus 3 plus a d6 for being sneak attack. So what I've rolled is a 13 plus 3, so I did 16 damage.
Okay. So this skeleton, as it just comes out and it's like arm goes back, he takes his rapier and puts it right up, and this is part of the GM's thing, describing what the outcome of actions are, and especially in combat.
Explain I'm smashing.
So this thing is moving back, and you just take it right up in its shoulder joint and pop its arm right off, but your blade would also right up through its jaw and into the back of its neck and pop that off. So the back of the skull essentially falls off, its jaw comes off the bottom, and its arm comes off, and it just crashes against you as just a pile of bones, and you just destroyed this thing in one shot.
Yeah.
And that's when you hear the clattering of a second one coming out.
Boom.
And it comes and swings.
Oh, it swings. It's already it's ready.
It was right behind the other one.
Yeah.
But this thing, like the other one falling in front of it and coming out in the darkness and how quick all this is, it has disadvantage to this roll. So I'm rolling 2d20. I'm taking the lower of the two, and I'm adding its bonus, which is a plus 4.
So, saying dice, like superstitions and whatnot, we usually, when we have a larger group here, I try to give my dice to the other people rolling disadvantage because my dice will always roll low.
And the other one
dice
can hopefully
will always roll higher, so I always give mine up to the...
So I rolled an 11 and a 6. The 6 plus 4 is a 10, and your armor class is a 13. So
it misses.
I miss him. So I get a 10. He has a 13 to hit him. I need to get a 13 or higher, and I missed. So this skeleton comes out swinging.
So something fun about Dungeons and Dragons, when you say armor class, it's a combination of my armor and my dexterity and my strength.
It's your defensive abilities all around.
When you say like, 13 doesn't hit, it means that I got out of the way. I dodged, I rolled, I did something clever, and I missed.
10 doesn't hit, you're 13. And
character description is a lot of fun in Dungeons and Dragons.
Initiative in this game maintains from round to round. So you have your initiative bonus is plus 3. So you have a 23. You rolled the 20 in the beginning, so that only gives you advantage on that first round. But you maintain that 23, which is great because you're going first. This thing rolled a 8, and its initiative bonus is 2. So it is going on the initiative level of 10. If you had multiple people, you'd roll all these, you'd write all their numbers down, and you'd go in order. So like if you had a 23 and a 17 and a 10 and a 12, you'd go 23, 17, 12, 10, and do all of those. If you had a group,
as GM, it's his job to write
all that down,
20,
call
15,
people
17,
out.
18, 12, he said, your turn.
And if you had a group, like if I had 3 goblins, I'd roll them all at once, and all 3 goblins would go on the same round. They'd all do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're 4 monsters. They have a challenge rating, and it'll give you the difficulty. It can go down into the fractions, and what that is explained in the book and explained a little bit in the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide. But essentially, if you have a challenge rating 1 and you're fighting a single character, a level 1 person character of the game, it should take a quarter of their resources to defeat that thing. Meaning, actually, I think it's more if it's 1.
I think it's a third, actually.
Right,
It's 30.
it's 30. It's 4. It's a quarter because it's for a 4-man party.
It is.
So, if it's a 4-man party of first level characters against a level 1 challenge rating, it should take a quarter of their resources to beat it. That's a quarter of their spell slots, a quarter of their hit points, a quarter of their abilities, equipment, whatever the thing is that is. So on a 1-to-1, that's pretty bad. But then you have things that are lower, like skeletons are 1/4 challenge. So 1 skeleton is 1/4 of a first level character. So that would have just been like...
It should take 1/4 of my equipment.
Points. It's just like a challenge rating 1 fighting 4 people.
So it should take a quarter.
It still should take a quarter of everything. I mean, but there were 2 of them.
Half my hit points,
There were 2 of them. You went in and wounded already because the traps. The traps have challenge ratings as well. So he already dealt with a trap, which took him half out of the game. And then there was 2 quarter challenge enemies.
And you spaced them on purpose to make sure that I lived.
And that is another thing you learn as a DM. I put 2 skeletons in here, but I fielded it as if he gets through the trap unharmed, both skeletons are going to come out. If he doesn't get through the trap unharmed, 1 skeleton's going to come out, and then I'm going to see where he's at. If he does really well against that first skeleton, then the second one's going to come out. If he starts struggling with the first one, maybe that second one doesn't come out.
There is something also in the player handbook. There is a challenge rating calculator. You have to do it yourself. It's experience versus level and versus amount too as well. Yep. It's a pretty simple math problem, but you can struggle with it. It's difficult. D&D Beyond does it for you. It'll tell you, but that thing is invaluable. So when you're going to put things against your players as a DM, if you show up and you have this calculator on hand, you'll be like, okay, I got 3 things plus him, plus that, blah, 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 blah. You end up with a good time. Or if you ignore it, you end up with problems like I had where everybody just walked through my null prison. Everybody walked through my
your circus, your harpies, whatever. Harpies. And you really have to, like, it does take experience to know when to throw more. And as we were talking about with fudging rolls before, they don't know how many hit points these things have. They don't know the armor class. Even the rules lawyer that knows skeletons, all you have to do is describe them differently and say, these are beefier, these are that. They resist this, they resist that.
Fucking rules lawyers.
Right. And that's whatever. But if they're very experienced players, you can still mess with it. You can give things more hit points. You can lower the hit points. If you need something to drop faster, if you need something to miss, you can fudge. You can do all that.
The real point of Dungeons and Dragons is just
have fun. It's a cooperative.
Have fun.
Yeah, it's a cooperative storytelling game where everyone is supposed to have fun. That's everyone. It's not DM versus players. The DM needs to have fun. The players need to have fun. And technically speaking, as the person that's creating the story and crafting the encounter, I don't have fun if they don't have fun. If they're frustrated and they die and they're angry at the end of it, then I did something wrong because we didn't have fun.
Well, I'll say the inverse of that, though, is that sometimes when you do kill us or sometimes when you do really beat our asses, the discussion afterwards is also really important. You should be friends with your players.
And sometimes it happens, especially with die rolls. The only time I've ever had a total player kill, it came down to the dice rolls of the players. Everyone in my group failed a saving throw, and then they all failed multiple other saving throws.
Yeah, saving throws.
So I was frustrated. But you guys were like, oh, that's the roll of the dice. And I'm like, I threw this at you. I felt a little bit bad, but everyone had fun.
We did.
You still had fun. You're like, oh my god,
shit,
this just happened.
That was the end. That was the end. It was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy that.
So, but there's a lot of new DMs out there that is like, I need to set up an encounter that kills my players. And that's super easy to do. You could just go, I'm going to put high-level things like
a killer.
You could just do. I do. I don't think we have the time though. But
we have 20 minutes.
You need to kill the skeleton, buddy. So roll it.
All right.
You have the initiative. You're on 23.
All right. Right here. Sorry. Usually on Wiley vs. Mitch, we try to buff things up and get some kill in there. But 10.
10 total.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you rolled a
5
and plus 5. So you missed the skeleton, and the skeleton's going to attack you now. Now it's even rolls. Like it's just you and this thing tangling around this dark, deep cellar. It swings at you. Ooh-wee! That is a 19.
Fuck off.
Rolled. Plus 4 is 23. Obviously that hits. He only has a 13.
Obviously, I'm very quick. Come on now. 13. You got it.
13. So this is gonna be bad.
That's all right.
But it could happen. Wiley versus Mitch, we're supposed to kill him. So I'm supposed to kill this guy. I'm just going to go ahead and roll it. I'm going to roll the big one.
I bought these for him as a birthday present a couple of years ago. And they've been nothing but shitty for me. They're always for major decisions.
1d6 plus 2. Ugh. So you only have 4 hit points left.
All right.
I need to roll a 1. For you to survive.
For me to survive, yeah.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I rolled a 1. He survives one more round. He gets one more round at this thing. So he has 1 hit point left, and he's fighting a skeleton.
Disengage. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
You can
No. I'm fucking...
No. There. Go for it.
All right.
Do it. Do it!
Give me a second. 7.
You miss.
No.
He misses.
Oh.
And you can get this in these games. Normally you have more players and someone would succeed. But there is a problem with a lot of games where it's the fail versus fail versus fail. And you can just have rounds that nothing happens. Some games try to combat that. Some games don't. This game is better than most because you have a higher percent chance to hit than you have failure, where you have Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, where 2 people can have 30% chances to hit each other, and they had to correct it. They had to do something because you could it could be a 10-turn combat of miss. So in this game, that happened to fail. Their first level, they're flailing at each other. It's scary, but you still have a very good chance of hitting. Don't touch your dice. Roll it off the tablet. Roll it off the paper. Do it. I'm telling you. Watch another natural 20. 12, right?
12, yeah.
It has an underclass of 13, so he fails one more time.
No, yes!
That's a 10, so it misses you.
Yeah.
He got a
10.
Misses the skeleton. Wow, this is like whiff. Yeah, you're gone.
Shit.
You died.
So,
yep.
Faldair, who is the new half-elf rogue that we just rolled, has been killed.
By a skeleton.
So, when you encounter this in a D&D game, you have one of 2 options. One, the character's dead, move on. There's some saving throws, there's some coming back, sort of thing like that. But if you're doing a campaign, you really have to decide, is the character gone? Do we write the character back in? Do we let it go?
If you're new DMing on this stuff, and you have a campaign set, and it's based on the character's histories and all this stuff, this is the way I do it. I come at it like a TV show. And in a TV show, for me, the actors own their characters. So I come at it like table reads. I come at it with everyone's involved in this. They're writing the script with me. I have where the story is going. They're going to tell me what their characters would and wouldn't do in these situations. And regardless of Game of Thrones, things like that, I don't have an overarching plot that requires characters to die. My plot is based on those characters. So for me, I say a player decides when his character dies. And if the dice rolls happen and the character hits 0 hit points and it's a position where they wouldn't be saved, then you ask them, hey, is this where your character falls? Is this not? And conversely, you can also come to characters, or players can come to you and say, I don't want to play this character anymore, or I think in this encounter I'm not going to survive. And you can then make it part of the campaign where there is a cinematic death.
There's also, for new DMs, you don't need to do things cinematically like that as well. I died. I can be dead. You can say, hey, you're done.
You're dead.
You're over.
Go on.
Let's make something new. Let's move on from there. Or you can say, hey, something happens, the spirits invoke some sort of power and bring you back, or your rest of your characters kind of have the chance to bring you back or drag you back to town. You can write things in, you can write things out. fudging can go that way too. Like when you killed me, you always kill me. You killed
Wiley versus Mitch.
Yeah, that's why you killed me.
So in Dungeons & Dragons, once a person hits 0 hit points, they then have death saves, and this is an iconic thing in the game. They're all kinds of things about it. They used to do it different ways in different editions, but in this one, you basically have a track of 3 fails, 3 successes. You need one of those tracks to fill up before you figure out what happens. Either you get 3 successes or you get 3 failures before the other, and either you live or die.
They can build up to, you can have 2 death save throws, 2 survive save throws, and then
see which one's the tiebreaker.
It's terrible.
Now, the saving throws are a little bit better than 50-50. It is actually 55-45. You need a 10 or higher to succeed. And so only a 1 through 9 fails. There are some things that mess with that. A natural 20 will wake you right up.
Yeah.
Nope, it wakes you right up.
So 1 hit point.
If you roll a 20, you get right up. Your saving throws are done. You have 1 hit point, and all of that is over. It resets. If you get a natural 1, you get 2 strikes against you. He's done that before. Actually, several people in my games have done that before. Also, if something attacks you while you're down, they have advantage to do it. They hit you. They don't even roll damage. They just give you 2 death strikes.
Yeah.
So, in this case, it depends on what the skeleton is told to do or what it's programmed to do. Is it just knock you on the ground and then walk away because it's done its job? Or is it a killer of life and slams you until you die and then walks away? And then he has to roll, like, even if the thing walks away, then he has to roll his death saves, or I make a decision of whether he lives or not.
So Wiley does try to keep us alive when we play regular games. But right now, it's me by myself. We're doing kind of a quick, let's do bam, 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 bam. My death, there's no death saving throws. I'm fucking dead. The skeleton shot me to death. It's just me. I went downstairs, I found some skeletons, skeleton shot me, I'm done. It's over. So Wiley versus Mitch, success, 3rd time out of 5.
Also, that trap was for the skeletons, by the way. It was to make sure the skeletons don't get out. So that's why the guy sent you down there.
That's a regular Mitch saving throw too. Oh, you failed the trap search. I'm the trap search guy.
So this is Dungeons & Dragons core rules.
Sorry if there was a lot
just
of
talk
talk
over it. I mean, we have a lot of history. We have a lot of things to talk about.
This is the one game that I'm really familiar with, so I got excited and I talked a lot. We went over the player's handbook. We went over the monster manual. We talked a little bit about the DM manual and Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and the other one
Volo's Guide to Monsters, and Mordenkainen's Guide to
Encounters, I think it is.
No, I keep forgetting all of them. Anyway, we are probably not going to do a Wiley vs. Mitch for a while because... One more?
One more.
Okay, so we got one more in us. I have to figure out what that's going to be. We're going to have a Wiley vs. Mitch next week. We may have a hiatus, or they may become irregular as we go into his school year until he gets to next
I gotta
winter.
Go to school and stuff, yeah. We might
but every Wednesday, we have a consistent game, which is Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to be starting a whole new campaign, first level, some new players, tomorrow night. So, and we're there every Wednesday night. It's 9:30 Arizona time, which happens to line up with Pacific time right now. So 9:30 Pacific, 10:30 Mountain, 11:30 Central, 12:30 East Coast.
We also have some irregular games. Every so often we have a Sunday. This Tuesday thing might not happen all the time, but we're here somewhere. Talk to us, bring in. We love conversation.
Message me.
Yes.
Follow the channel. Message me. I get the message eventually. I check my Twitch. If you need help, if you want insight on a game, if you want to chat about any type of gaming stuff, if you want any of us to play in your game or guest host or guest run, hit us up. We'll figure it out. So
absolutely. We're available quite a bit more than we play because there's a bunch of us and it's hard to get people together. But yeah, come on down. We love having viewers. We love having comments. We love conversing. And we love playing tabletop stuff. So.
Thank you. see ya tomorrow night.